someday soon that will be a commercial break for our famous sponsors. We're looking for sponsors. I'd love to be sponsored by some great places like Animal House Fitness. Have seen some of their work on Instagram with some interesting products that make training easier. And maybe someone like Fat Sal's in Westwood, shameless plug with no remuneration, but we're looking for sponsors out there. So that would be during a commercial break. And I want to talk a little bit about Rodney Van and our special Bruin editions. Rodney's now coaching at Cabrillo High School in Long Beach. And we're looking to hear from him shortly about what's going on there. But we just got word that Kevin Young has entered the room, so we're going to let him in. And there he is. He's connecting. He can't hear me yet. He's on mute.
I am unmute.
He's unmuted.
Yes, can you hear me or see me? I'm trying to get my lighting together. I was downstairs.
Yes, sir. And it's 9 o'clock where you are instead of noon where I am, so that makes it harder.
I had a hold up, let me see. That's not working.
Oh, my wife got me one of those little click lamps that I've been using for.
Oh man, I've been trying to figure this social media thing out for a minute, trying to get little equipment and stuff. Crap.
Yeah, she got me a little dock that allows me to plug things into my computer, and now I got a little microphone hooked up to it and a little light. So
let me see if I can find my light switch at least. I think there we go.
There we
it's
go.
A lot better. A lot better. I can adjust the light a little bit. I don't know how long this power pack is gonna last.
All right. Well, we'll take what we can get. Kevin Young, how are you, man?
I'm fine, man. It's funny. I just got back from Lausanne yesterday. I drove down there to the track meet, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
It was 2 days ago. Yesterday, or 2 mornings ago.
Right.
And I just got back here actually to Zurich, and then I end up saying, you know what, I can go to Lausanne. 3-hour drive from Zurich in the car, and the wife gave me the car to take. I said, cool. So I did just that. And to my surprise, I got there to the meeting. The meeting director, Jackie Delapierre, I emailed him. I didn't get a chance to talk to him on the phone. And he said, yo, Kev, like it was a bit of a rush me wanting to go down there for him to kind of lay it out, spread it out for me.
Right.
And what eventually happened was he said, I'm gonna leave you some passes and credentialed a little wristband to get in some of the venues, VIP stuff that they had going on. And I was like, bet. So once he had mentioned that to me, I got in the car, shot down to Lausanne. There was a storm on the way, because I guess the storm was moving away from the east going west. Real bad, nasty storm. I drove through it, got to Lausanne, it was beautiful. I get to the meet, can't find Jackie, obviously, because he's a meet director. The meet has started. You got all the top of the athletes, all the Swiss athletes there, of course, top American athletes are there, most of them, Jamaican athletes. And I had no idea that at the particular time, when they finally got in touch, Jackie, I was in one of the VIPs standing off to the side of the information booth, and one of the gentlemen was on the telephone trying to kind of call folks around, did that. Long story short, I ended up getting walked into the stadium. As soon as I came to the stadium, Jackie saw me, and like you have basically the tunnels that go into the infield.
Yeah.
He was standing in the tunnel, and he kind of directed me to come through. And they were actually putting up the hurdles. I think the women's hurdles at that time. I crossed over the track. As soon as I crossed over the track into the infield, he's about to announce me to the audience. They had a presentation they had to do, and then to my surprise, they had the IOC president. He was standing right next to him. And he said, "Okay, Kevin, bring on the infield." Well, he brought me on the infield, shook my hand, I gave a big old hug. We walked off. I walked off the infield, out back into the tunnel, the other tunnel, And then I waited there, and at that moment, I had walked past Sergey Bubka, and I was walking down a stairway because he was standing up on the top stair to walk onto the infield.
Right.
And when I was walking across the infield, um, my attention was pointed down because I knew I had to walk down a flight of steps to get to the bottom. So whoever, I just saw a bunch of bodies standing up there, right? And I
Right.
didn't even notice any faces. So I walked down. As soon as I get to like 4 steps down, I stop, I turn around and I look up, right? I said, "Oh, snap, it's Sergey Bubka." He's in the suit
Right.
and everything. And he was telling me he was trying to get my attention, but I hadn't noticed him. And then I was like, I just kind of bugged out, right? And then I looked up and I said, "Oh, wow, they got the IOC president here, President Thomas Bach. He was there." So that was
Wow.
really cool. And then, of course, it was a selfie moment because I happened to have my iPhone in my hand. So, of course, I had it on video mode. I'm trying to take a picture of the crowd and all.
Right.
But then when I did that little procession going back and forth and figured out who I was standing next, then I really got fanning out and started taking selfies with the IOC president, which is really cool. It was
That's
the first time I
awesome.
ever met him. He had a pretty cool energy with him too, so I kind of like that. So
Cool.
I ran my mouth for the first 5 minutes, Troy.
Oh man. Hey, well, I gave everybody your big send up, and I realized after being a teammate of yours for a couple of years at UCLA, and then, following your career from afar and all that, but even the time you were there, I realized I didn't know a whole lot about you athletically before you came to UCLA. So I know you're a local kid around LA, so I'm assuming you went to high school somewhere in the area. And did you do anything else besides track and field? Did you play
Well,
any
my first love was
basketball?
basketball, man.
Yeah.
First love was b-ball, and it's funny because, again, excuse me, Troy, I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to get this lighting situation taken care of. My first love was basketball. Growing up, man, I always wanted to be Dr. J. So, of course, that's the
Right.
story I always tell. And I was a good rec ball player. Nothing really serious, nothing to be trying to get scholarships.
Right.
Right. So what it eventually happened was I had when you're in city schools, it's that 6 period gym period. So you pretty much have a sport to participate in the whole season. And so I
Right.
think when school starts in the fall, you have that basketball team to make. So early on in my, I guess, sporting career, since I played a lot of basketball, I end up trying out for the basketball team. I think in LA they had C's, B's, junior varsity, and varsity.
Right.
And I think I went out for the B basketball team. And then I didn't make the B basketball team. I ended up making the C basketball team. And so that was really fun though. And I matriculated to junior varsity my sophomore year. And I believe my junior senior year, or was it my I know I ended up making the varsity team my senior year. So I ended up playing varsity basketball at Jordan High School. And like I said, I had a great time. I enjoyed it. I had some highlights in my career. I got dunked on by Dennis Johnson's little brother. Lloyd Johnson, he went baseline on me and banged on me real hard. I was,
Right.
on the wing, and I should have just let him take the line and get it off, and just kind of head back up
Right.
the field, right up the
Make sure
court.
you're not in the shot of the poster shot.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But of course, I was always playing, to defend. So I ran out on the wing, and he went, like I said, he went baseline and just went sky. He went up and reversed on me like this. I was like,
Oh.
oh, I got posterized, man. Got posterized. Uh, that was the highlight of my high school career. But however, I think the biggest lesson that I did learn going to Jordan High School and being a participant in sports were, different disciplines that you kind of go by. And I really learned my hard work and effort um, playing with a lot of the seniors, because I really watched those guys train real hard. And, we were out there doing suicides and diving for balls and all that stuff.
Right.
So it was one of those situations where you always gave your best effort. And even if you're just dead tired, obviously when you're dead tired, you can't, do much. When you're dead
Yeah.
tired, you just go off to the side and just kind of recover. And one thing I know about when you perform like that in front of a coach, they really see that you really mean what you're trying to do, and your effort is genuine. And so I was always one of those type of athletes that all you always want to feel comfortable doing your best when you had the opportunity to do it. So that was the case for me. Um, but I remember, for me, track was the fun part, because when I started participating in track in high school.
Getting just a little bit of cutting in and out.
Because on the West Coast, we had 300-meter races. But I wanted to be a high hurdler, man. That was my thing. The high hurdler. I mean, I was tall and gangly. It was like a perfect fit. I just had to learn how to run the race because I had never run the highs. I remember when I first started track and field athletics, I was a long jumper. I mean, those were the very first disciplines that my
Right.
elementary school teacher, Miss Karen Hilborn, Lindbergh High School, Linwood, California. She had us out there, and she was showing us the long jump, the high jump, triple jump. So I remember early on, I was a big fan of jumpers,
Hmm.
uh, Willie Banks, Dwight Stone, those guys, Ty Peacock. I
Yep.
remember when Page used to high jump. So it's funny because I know when you're in school, you were a high jumper, So I think that was our big connection.
Yep. Yep.
Knowing, hanging out with the jumpers, uh, that was always a highlight of my life, trying to, get better and better at the high jump. I wish I could, the fact that being a walk on at UCLA and trying to kind of get in where you fit in type of attitude that you got to have, because
Yeah.
there's many people out there that fall, that are trying out for the team, and this
Yeah.
weeding process is basically on survival of the fittest.
Right. Right.
And if you can handle the pressure and kind of handle being at the university, and also being a student athlete, you
Yeah.
just kind of
Just get a little connection lag every once in a while.
okay.
I found that I didn't know, first of all, now we're talking Linwood. So that's Long Beach, Jordan, right? So you're
No, LA Jordan, LA
LA
Jordan,
Jordan.
LA Jordan.
Okay. I
Because it's funny
was
because
thinking that's close to Long Beach too,
I
but
was all over the place when in middle school. I could tell you, just check this out. I went to born in Watts, moved to Compton right after the riots around, I guess,
right.
in the 60s, obviously mid 60s. So about 65, I think we moved from 114th Street, 113th Street to Park Village in Compton. Moved there, and I remember going to kindergarten as well as first, second, third grade in Compton. I went to Theodore Roosevelt Elementary School, not too far from Lourdes Park. So growing up as a kid, I knew all about, right, walking all around through Compton on that side, on the east
Right.
side. Um, my older sister, one of my older sisters, she had went to Whaley Middle School. So I'm always up Rosecrans, just all over the place as a real youngster. Then
Right.
we moved from there to, where we go from there? Moved from there to further on into Linwood. And when I might mix things up.
It's
Let's see.
close to Downey, right?
Oh
Linwood
no,
Downey.
yeah, that's what it
Right.
was. Yeah, exactly. Because you got Watts, Southgate,
Yeah.
Downey a little bit further down. LA, if you go, well, Jordan is in LA, but further up you get
Yeah.
then you got Huntington Park. You go south, you have Compton schools and all that. So yeah,
Yeah.
in that area, definitely in that area,
Right.
Alameda, Slauson, um, uh, Alameda, Slauson, or Manchester,
Right.
those streets. So I was just always in that area. But I remember when I oh, third grade, after going from third grade in Compton, I moved to Linwood. That's when I moved to Linwood, and I literally still lived. I lived on the border of Linwood and Compton. It was like an alleyway, or maybe half a mile walk, if that less. I think it was less than that. Maybe it could have been 400 meters. You walk 400 meters in one direction, you're in Compton. I mean,
Right.
literally. So you go to the dairy or the liquor store, you got to walk to Compton, and you walk through the alleyway and come back. You're in Linwood, going
Wow.
home. And so I did. That was third, fourth. Well, actually, it was fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. So I ended up graduating from the elementary school from Lindbergh, and it was there at Lindbergh, with the grace of Karen Hilborn, introduced me to track, physically into track and field. I've always been a
Right.
track fan, watching on television, that sort
Right.
of thing, the games, all the indoor stuff they would have on Wild World of Sports, those
Yep.
sorts of things. And so I was a big track fan, also reading sports history and learning about all the great track and field athletes. Um, but it really wasn't until I got to UCLA, and it was interesting because when I got to UCLA, I was a walk on. I wanted to go to USC all my life. I wanted to be a Trojan,
Right.
and when I didn't get accepted at USC, um, kind of heartbroken, I guess you would say, and angry at the same time. And I never forget that Coach Art Venegas, he got my hold of my phone number somehow, um, and he called me on the phone. It was surreal. I guess you would say, because he called and he picked up the phone, and he said, well, we can't give you a scholarship this year, but we'd love for you to come out for the team. And I was like, okay, bet, I'll be there in the fall. And so in my head, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is it going to entail to make the UCLA roster?
Yeah.
But it was,
So it's
yeah,
funny because you and I had the same experience. I was a CIF champ and all that, went to state, but nothing from anybody. I keep
I took
telling
third
people
at
now, I
state in
go, yeah,
84.
six
I was runner up.
when it's 6'10" now in high school, you can go anywhere, and back then it was like when I came into UCLA, I was number 7 on the depth chart, 6'10" and 3/4. And then the first time I talked with Coach Larson, he goes, yeah, I'm the jumps coach. I don't really know much about the jumps, but I'm working with mostly Dell and Lee, right? And then he goes, so I looked at him, I go, well, I was a walk-on. I go, what is it going to take to get a scholarship? And he went, he just kind of laughed. And I went, what are you laughing at me for? And then he goes, well, you jump 7.2 and we'll talk. So my sophomore year, I jumped 7.2. And that next Monday, I was sitting in his office when he came walking in, and he looked at me and he goes, oh, you want some money? I go, yeah, that'd be nice. And so they hooked me up. But yeah, I didn't know that you were a walk-on there, and that I never got called by anybody, though. You got a call from Art Venegas. Now I'm jealous.
Yeah, I got the call. I didn't know who that guy was. Right? Yeah, I got the call. And it's so funny. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out to this day, how do you even get the number? Maybe he saw the number on the application, that UC application where you fill it out and you check the 3 boxes of the 3 schools
Yeah.
that your top 3 schools that you want the application to be mailed to.
Right.
I could maybe grab it from there. I could have went to the financial aid office, something like that, administration. But like you said, that was my experience. And so that fall, it's a trip, because you go to UCLA and you see guys who got the scholarship that you competed against while you're in high school,
Right.
and some of those guys you would say, okay, I can see them getting a scholarship. But there's a couple guys you say, I guess I had no one to politic for me or kind of reach
Right.
out earlier in the spring and summer, to make sure that I had a little padding on financially. And that was, dude, I didn't know nothing about recruiting in
No.
high school. I mean,
Yeah.
I was thinking about, I did one visit. I went on one visit in high school, and it was to Cal Poly Pomona. And we had a guy named Jeff Williams who was a quarter miler at Jordan, and he graduated a year or 2 before I did. And he had went to Cal Poly. And so when I remember he was talking to his coach, and he said, we maybe have a young guy from my high school to come out here to join the team. So actually, I took a visit with Jeff one afternoon. He came up. I remember he came on campus, and we planned on driving up to Cal Poly that one afternoon. And he scooped me up. We drove out there, walked me around the campus, and met the coach. And it was a really good positive visit. I got to give the coach. I forgot what his name was, but darn it, what's his name? Huh? I can't think of the guy's name. The coach at Cal Poly at the time, but shout out to him. He was the first one that even considered the possibility of giving me a little money to go to
Right.
school there. But when I like I said, that was still at the time where I was hoping I was going to get into USC. But when I didn't get into SC, and then I got actually the way I found I didn't get into USC was I had got a letter. I got a letter in the mail, and it's basically saying, thank you very much for seeking the attendance at USC, but unfortunately, you didn't get
Thanks,
a
but no thanks. Yeah.
thanks, but no thanks. Basically, I got the heartfelt letter, and I was hurt, bitter, but like saving the grace was saved by Coach Venegas when he called and just said, the opportunity
Yeah.
of trying out for UCLA's track team. I knew about Foster, and then of course,
Huh.
half of, well, if not more, half of the sprinting squad at Team USA were all either former Bruins or
Yeah.
trained at UCLA. And so it's
Yeah.
funny, when I got there that fall of '84, I was in awe. I was like, yo, Joyner, Kersey,
Yeah.
Bolden, Brown,
Yep.
Hooks,
Hooks.
um,
Yeah. Flojo was there too, wasn't she?
Ojo,
Everybody was
all
good.
of them. Jack, and
Yeah.
Jackie was our teammate, right?
Yep. Yep.
He
She
was
was
still
playing
Jackie.
basketball and running track. You
Right,
had Bobby
right. So
Kersey coaching. You had, and then what
Calvin
after?
Brown was out there.
Yeah, after you and I got rolling, John Smith came onto the staff. I don't remember John being there my first 2 years. '84, I remember mostly because of John Brenner. who was throwing shot and just like crazy.
John came in 85.
I think so. I want to say so because I remember Steve Lang came in that year also, and I think they came in together.
Right. So John wasn't there in
Then
84. John was there
85,
before.
86 was my junior and senior year. And then now
That's my
my question was because a lot of the famous guys came in after, you had Mike Marsh, and
exactly.
Danny Everett, and Henry Thomas. All those guys came in my senior year, your sophomore year, and then a lot of those guys became Olympic champions. Steve Lewis was not there yet. So you had that. But then my question was, when did you start working with John Smith?
I started making my sophomore year. It was 86. I had because Alan Rigby, coach at Mission
I
Viejo,
remember Alan, her coach. Yeah.
coach, right? They brought him in as the high hurdle coach um, to supervise, I guess, the men's team, the men's hurdle squad. And I
Right.
remember the first few years training with those guys. But the interesting thing about it was I hadn't done much on the quarter mile side at all. I was basically doing jumps and running the highs. I was triple jumping, long jumping, and running the high hurdles. And it wasn't until John got there, and I think I had gotten up to 5109. No, yeah. Well, John was still there. Well, no, John had just gotten there. But I got through that first season, and I think I was maybe fifth in Pac-10 in the Pac-10 my freshman year. But I realized that our top high hurdlers, none of those guys really they really didn't care too much for the longer race.
Right.
And that pretty much became my end. I was like, okay, the only way for me to really secure my spot on this squad was to see if I can raise the bar, I guess, in my bar, I guess, in the first. What
Right.
eventually happened was I remember one afternoon training it was in the fall. I was training, of course, with the hurdlers. So we're all doing drills. So we had, hurdle drills. They would, set 10 one direction, 10 the other direction, doing all pop over drills over 110 meters. 100 hurdles back to back. And we did all the hurdle drills, the jump roping, the bounding, all that good stuff, plyometrics. And then after I had done all the hurdle workout or warm-up workout, and then John, I remember he was working out the quarter milers. And you're right, the freshman athletes there that who I think Mike
Marsh. Yeah, Marsh, Everett, Danny Everett.
Those guys were right.
Henry Thomas got hurt right away, but the other guys were.
He sure did. So they were there. So I actually started training with Danny. And I remember John asked me one afternoon, so it's sophomore year. One afternoon, he said, "I'm gonna see you run a quarter." Because when we were there, I was hanging out with D Biggs and Howard Colburn and White and those guys,
Yeah.
And whoever
Dwayne
else.
Washington, you did Dwayne.
D Wash, yeah, D Wash. Yeah. We had Trevor.
So you're hanging out with the long and the triple jumpers.
I'm hanging out with the jumpers, right? Yeah, I'm hanging out with the jumpers because I'm jumping as well. So I'm hanging out with those guys, hanging out with Milan Tiff. So that was the squad. And the fact that it was crazy because I remember as well as hanging out with the throwers too, because I was the skinny dude. It's just the anticipation of what those guys were all about. So you had Brenner who was out there, you had Fraser was out there, Bill Green was there, of course, working out with Art.
Fraser, Iceman.
Mike Schmidt was out there.
Jim Banich.
Yes, right, Banich.
Fraser's coaching at Texas State now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the head coach at Texas State.
I had no idea.
Get that gig, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. So those guys are out there. So we had a motley crew, I guess you can say, of just at UCLA, and everybody's pretty much trying to figure it out, especially the underclassmen. If you weren't included, didn't have a scholarship, obviously the guys in our position, we're trying to get in where we fit in and trying to do our best and then keep the good attention on us and the bad attention away from us. So what eventually happened is I started working out with the quarter milers in my, I guess, quote unquote, off time from the highs.
Right.
And it was one of those things in which I became I became a quarter miler one afternoon. It was like, John said, I remember, I'll never forget this. He said, I want you to first he said, have you ever done a quarter? I said, no, I've never done a quarter.
Right.
He said, get out of here. I said, no, I've never done a quarter. I've only done 300-meter hurdles. I don't, anything beyond 300 meters, I hadn't done. I'm not doing. I
Right.
didn't, not that I'm not going to do, but it was never forced upon me because we never had
Right.
really uh, great
Somebody who knew
hurdle
what they're doing. Yeah. Yeah.
at high school, right? So
Yeah.
he basically said that I'm just, hand time, you can run around the track. I just want you to execute, um, working on your stride length and knee lift and that sort of thing, arm swing, just basic biomechanics and just kind of
Right.
moving around without trying to be really heady about it. I said, cool. I was kind of tired because I just did all the hurdle pop over drills and all that running. And he said, just relax and just don't even think much about it. This is not not even a time trial. I just want to see what you can do on the track. I think I ended up running a hand time of 40, maybe 47.8 or 48.7.
Really?
It was
Wow.
sub 50 point, right? It was sub
Yeah.
50. And I remember D Biggs was screaming. Because y'all know we always had real good vocal support while being out there on the track.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
To a point where it could be pretty annoying. So the screaming and the yelling and all that, as I made it around the track, and they were surprised. I was surprised even that I was able to, get around the track like I did. And then I think John just started going, okay, yeah, all right, yeah. And then that became the time in which my workout started to mesh, and it was like, okay, half the time with the drills were always with the high hurdlers, and then I
Right.
would with the quarter milers and do the quarter mile workout, and then from there, we started to mesh workouts. So yeah, at least incorporating the hurdles into the distance of the track,
Right.
as opposed to just 110 meters on the straightaway. And meeting of the minds, John and I collaborated. It was like just hit and miss, just trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. Because he, like I said, he wasn't a hurdles coach, obviously,
Right.
um, and he wasn't much of a sprint coach because he's a quarter miler.
Right.
But because I remember when he got to UCLA, he had a lot of pushback from the sprinters. I remember
Yep.
that.
I
A
do
lot
that.
of
I remember that too.
Yeah, he had a lot
Yeah.
of pushback from the sprinters, and he kind of, and since he had that great recruiting year, the quarter milers, he had a way of just kind of being consumed,
Yeah.
developing the ones they had recruited when I was there. And I think that was Anthony Washington. I think Anthony Washington from AV got recruited.
Yep.
I think he was class of '84, so he was there
Had
early.
Henry, you had him, you had
He went to the next year,
Danny Everett.
and then Danny, yeah, Danny.
Those relay teams were something else. I remember the
Something else.
years. Now, did you end up running on that 4x4? Because I remember
Yeah,
going to
I saw from
SMU.
here.
You remember SMU in '86 when we went there, and they had that great team, and
Yes,
they took like 15 of us. They just took the top 15 UCLA guys, no matter what the event, and they put
right.
us in those 2-bedroom condos. You remember those? They pick us
I
up at
don't
the
remember that
airport.
though.
They picked us up in the airport in minivans. They drive us to these 2-bedroom condos, and I'm like walking in going, these are nice. And that was before SMU got the death penalty for football. So when we walked out onto that track, you remember that track was like this perfect practice track. They had a football field, another football field, this huge locker room with
Like a little bridge. It was a bridge because I remember
yeah.
the distance runner girl. I don't know how she jumped off the bridge or did something. I forgot what her name was, but she attempted something.
Huh.
I don't remember what her name was, but that was like the highlight of
Right.
the.
But I
Uh,
remember that relay though against SMU was
but that was
hotly
hot, man.
contested. That
Yeah, it
was
was hot. That was like the turning point, literally the turning point of that '86 season was a turning point, obviously for me as a hurdler, because like I said, prior to that, I went 5109 in the conference, and that was it. And I think that year everybody went to Texas for NCAA, and of
yeah.
course next year was, like I said, my big breakthrough year, and that around 5109. But then the next year I came back. I'm sorry, my sophomore year. That's when I ran the 48.77 at national in Indy.
Right.
I remember Mike was the top seed to win the long jump. He gets hurt. He can't win his national championship that year in '86. We had that hot relay, and
Yep.
it was, and like I said, I had the great hurdle race, and what happened in that hurdle race was amazing. Um, but I'm gonna flip back. I'm gonna go back to the relay. On the relay, we had Pony, myself. We had a variety of guys. We had Stanich, John. We had
Right.
John Stanich, myself, Anthony Washington. We
And
had Henry
Everett.
Henry and Danny,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
I think Danny always ran anchor, if I remember
Danny
right.
always anchor. And I ran second leg. I was, and I mean, that was great. With Standish ran third, I believe gave the stick to Danny in that final. And do you remember when Standish got to about 300 meters when the everything got bottlenecked on that turn, and
Oh,
he was in the turn, he was trying to make a move, he got cut off, he had to back off. He tried to make a move, he got cut off, he had to back off, and then finally he made a move, and they tried to collapse on him, and he just bust kind of right through, and then batons flew all up in the air. They would keep his in his hand. He dashes through. I'm surprised it wasn't a protest
right.
uh, and that call, but John ran his ass off, man, and gave his stick to Daddy. And like you said, we had that great run. SMU, we had that great team: Kevin Rosen, Roy Martin.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did we? I don't even remember. Did we win? It was. We might
no,
have
no,
come
no,
in
no, no, no,
second.
no.
It was second,
SMU
right?
won. SMU won.
Yeah.
Roy ran a
That's
hell
their
of a
home
leg.
track. Yeah.
Yeah, ran a hell of a leg, and then um, oh no, no, we had that nationals at Indianapolis that year in
Yeah.
'86.
I was talking about the relay though at
Oh, the
SMU. I
relay was
think they beat
yeah,
us,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
then
They were a hell of a
yeah,
relay, and they won that. We were runner ups. We took second
yeah,
place, but it was like no one really expected us. But
right.
we did run some good times though, because
Oh
running
yeah,
back in every Sunday, when we have our meets on the weekend, right, on Saturday, but when the Sunday Times would come out, it would have all the stats, or even that Monday paper, because they had
right,
to compile the stats from east to west coast and north to south. So all the schools and
right.
universities, colleges in the nation. So by Monday, between Sunday and Monday, you have the statistics, but by Monday you have all the times from all over the different schools, and you would compare, who had the flyest weekend at. I remember we had one of the fastest
Oh
four by
yeah,
one, 4x4 times one weekend, and then SMU had the fastest. So it was like
yeah,
somewhere down the road they were going to meet up,
yeah.
and NC's was that big meet, and of course SMU did their thing. Uh,
Yep,
but it let us know as a ragtag UCLA team, young freshmen on the squad,
yep.
uh,
Came
that
in
we had.
eighth. You guys came in eighth that year at nationals. We came in eighth. That was my only
Yeah,
year to go, and we
yeah,
came in eighth. And then you guys won it all the next year.
won it all. We set a collegiate record, ran 3:00:75:74 at
Yeah,
LSU. We broke SMU's record. I believe they had set the record prior to that.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
we ran. Then of course we went to Hayward Field,
yep,
to Eugene, and we set the NCAA record. That stood for about 17 years.
yep. Yeah,
You
that
know,
was.
and
I keep thinking back. The time that we were there, Kevin. Is really a boom time in sports at UCLA. Like when I got there as a freshman in 80 fall of 82, we won a Rose Bowl against Michigan. I think we won 3 of the next 4 Rose Bowls. We beat, Illinois. I remember watching Eric Ball work out in the
yes,
weight room
yes.
and, just so many great athletes, and then we get there. Aikman goes there, Ken Norton Jr., who I'm
I mean,
dying to get on this
we got a
podcast
laundry
someday.
list of Hall of Famers,
Oh,
man.
great football players. And then you got Reggie Miller, playing basketball. I remember bumping into Reggie in the
Yeah,
weight
Jack,
room.
Jack Haley,
Yeah.
Reggie,
Jack Haley,
Mike
these guys
Dale,
that
of
played
course,
NBA ball,
Paul Washington.
getting still bumping elbows with Sidney Wicks would be down
That's
there
right.
working out still.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
jacked. He looked like Orlando Woolridge. He was a
Yeah.
huge dude.
We
Oh,
had Paul Richardson was there.
yep, that's right. I remember
Uh,
Pooh. And so, and then we had these track and field was, on the up again, after Coach Bush retired, Coach Larson gets another title. And then we start cranking out Olympic gold
right,
medalists, yourself,
right.
Steve Lewis,
Even
Danny
Steve
Everett,
came.
Mike Marsh. Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
that
We
was
had
a time that where everything was just clicking. Now, we've been talking about this last couple of weeks. I've got
all
another
day with
version.
Bruins. Woo.
Well, we're still out there, but football's back coming back, and so is basketball again. But it's just kind of interesting now with this whole. What do you think about UCLA leaving the Pac-12 and going to the Big Ten? How crazy is that?
That is really crazy. Um, it's really interesting because we get this the football team. They really got to start cutting the mustard now. I mean,
Right.
they were, they really get an opportunity. But then again, what happens again, you get a lot of guys that's going to be recruited in the Midwest who probably wouldn't going to get a look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't even gave a look to UCLA because they're probably going to go to Oklahoma,
Yeah.
Texas.
We're going to have
Just
to compete in the,
really going to have.
recruiting
So I
back
definitely the
there.
football level is going to shoot up. I'm hoping now how are they gonna, is are the is that just a schedule for the football, possibly the basketball team? Or is that a schedule,
Yeah, if it's going to hit all
schedule
sports,
for
yeah, the travel is
Pokemon?
going to be crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
Is
football,
that for the full AD or just for those two sports? Or are they still
yeah,
trying to figure that out, that whole scheduling?
I'm sure they got a couple years here. Right. The thing that I thought right away was, when we were kids, it was, SC versus Ohio State or, whatever,
It's that
UCLA goes
rivalry.
to get
It's the
the
cross
one
it's the
time a
cross
year was
rivalry
at the Rose Bowl, right? So you get one of those. I'm like, we're going to have a Rose Bowl every week. It's
every
going to be
week.
like, we got to go against Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. I'm like, they're
Mhm.
loaded, right? I'm just like going, we better step up or we're going to get, steamrolled.
The football team gonna start looking like the track team.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, we just had I had a podcast with Maurice Jones-Drew, which and he doesn't know yet, or maybe he does. Rodney told him I forgot to hit the record button. So we spent an hour together and
Uh-huh.
talked about all this stuff, and it never even got recorded. So we're gonna have to do it again. But we were talking about
Are
this
we
same
recording this?
thing.
Are you
Yes. I
okay?
put a sticker on the screen, Kevin, that says don't forget to hit the record button. So and I made sure I was doing that intro before, but thank you for the reminder. I've been accused by many of being a little absent-minded, but we did talk about some of the same things, and Maurice Jones-Drew was talking about how well football and track go together. So
Uh-huh.
he was talking about, to get, these top guys and get them, both Rodney Van and him. And then we were talking about him running against Reggie Bush, in high school. And they were both obviously great, track guys and also great football players. So we went through that discussion. My next question for you, and this is, watching you win the gold medal was amazing that year. And watching you compete against Edwin Moses, who was the man, right? He was had not lost a hurdle race in like 11 or 12 years or something like that. Had like an 80 matches, I remember, winning streak that included at least 2 gold medals. I'm sure he would have won another one if he'd have gone in 80. And just amazing athlete. And then here you show up and you're on the come, everybody knows it, and this is this huge showdown, and you show out, win the gold, break the world record, and end the winning
That was
streak
incredible.
of
That
Edwin
was
Moses.
incredible.
What amazing. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I guess the build up to that was definitely my highlight of season as a collegian. I matriculated very well, I guess you would say, because literally from someone who was a 300-meter hurler in high school and then slowly make, improve upon what I need to do as a hurler. And it's just one thing is I had all this talent. I just didn't know how to use it at the time. And the one of the biggest or the greatest highlights of I can't say of my track and field career literally was in 1986 when I faced Danny Harris. Danny Harris is
Yeah.
a California high school legend, especially if you're a hurler. So I knew who he was, and the fact that we all watched him back in '84, win the
Right.
silver medal in the Coliseum. So when I
Yeah.
had opportunity to face Danny, my sophomore year in Indy, uh, that literally was the highlight. And so many things had happened in that race in Indianapolis. When I got into the race, I had a game plan to run the hurdles. Right, I had mind you, Troy. I just broken 49 seconds. The whole season in '86, I was stuck on 50 point.
Right.
Literally, with the Texas relays, I ran 50 point. We had several meetings at UCLA, stuck on 50 point, and it wasn't until Pac-10 championships in the Coliseum, and it's so crazy because when I remember the last time I was in the Coliseum was when I ran the high hurdles in the state meet of '84.
Mm-hmm.
And only, like I said, I only went to one side, but I knew how to, you could feel how the wind is swirling in there, just the breeze. But I've never been on the infield, on the other side of the infield, and feel how that wind moves around through the Coliseum. And
Right.
so I remember at the Pac-10 championships prior to the race, I remember asking Andre Phillips, and I said, Andre, yo, how do you run in here? I never raced in here. And he gave me some of the most soundest advice prior to me getting to Indy. He said, Kevin, this is going to happen. You're going to get in the race, gun's going to go off, the wind is going to hit you right in the face at the second hurdle. It's going to want to stand you up. He said, what you do is stay with your stride pattern and just move through the stride pattern. Don't let it affect you. Then once you get to the top of the turn, the wind is going to shift to your back. And once you notice that shift in your back, just relax and then just push through and move through. And
Yeah.
you should be okay. And Dre said that, and like clockwork. Of course, I got the anxiety, the nervous, the butterflies, everything is all over the place. Gun goes off. I take off a few strikes out, the wind, boom, hits me. And it's one of those situations where whoever is up above you in the stagger, you can see them really be affected by it. So I really noticed athletes running like this. And as soon as that wind hit them, they went and they went off. So obviously that was going to affect their stride pattern. Good thing I
Yeah.
got these long legs. So I was able to kind of get through and stride through the wind coming to me. And like I said, when it shifted to my back, it just sort of changed my whole continence of the race. And it was just, I was able to go bang, 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 finish up the last three hurdles. And I ran 49.06. First time I broke 50 point. I think at the time that was probably like a Pac-10 record,
Yeah.
you know,
Wow.
or a meet record or something like that. And I did that. And I was like, wow, that was my qualifier for UCLA for going to the national championships. I think I was probably, how track and field news used to do the collegiate rankings prior to the
Hmm.
national championships. So they had like the tell of the tape who they expected to win. They expected Danny, of
Right.
course, to win since he had already ran the first two. and,
Right.
Olympic,
Safe bet. Yeah.
you know. So when I got there, I actually started hearing the names, basically putting faces to the names of runners that I would eventually face, and guys like Pat McGee and Kevin Henderson, those guys. Uh, in any case, but getting back to Danny, I got to the race and knowing that he was who he was. My first strides out of the blocks to the first hurdle was 20 strides. Um, the gun goes off. That's 20 strides of me approaching the first hurdle with my left leg, which is my dominant leg. Gun
Right.
goes off. I fly. I know I got Danny Harrison. I just bolted out the blocks. I get out. I get to the first hurdle, but instead of it being
You're
a
left. You're on your right.
I'm on my right, so I just take it. Bang! I get back on, but not knowing when I get to the next hurdle.
What's going to happen? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the second hurdle with my left leg. And now, so that means then I go to the third hurdle, I'm back on my right leg. So I'm actually going 12 steps instead of 13 that I was thinking I was
Right.
going to do, just because of the mistake the hype that I got caught up in at the
Right.
first hurdle. So now I'm going 12 steps, but in the moment you're just moving.
Yeah.
Uh, but I know in my head, I'm not going to be able to hold this on, or I'm telling myself I'm not be able to hold this on for much longer. So I
Right.
go 2, 3, 4. And I'll never forget. I said, I need to get back on my dominant leg, my left leg. And so I remember
Right.
approaching the fifth hurdle and then just taking off on my left leg, going airborne. So I go airborne, and my parabola was nice and high. I get over the hurdle and I land. I clip it with my toe. My toe was dangling, but I made the clearance with my knee, but the foot was dangling. It brushes the hurdle, knocks it over a little bit. I get to the other side um, safely, one piece. So now I'm on my normal gait, right? So I'm 13 now. So I'm 13.6, 13.7, 13.8, 13.9. Danny catches me because I got to leave coming in the top of the turn. Danny catches me in the straightaway, and he runs 48.33, I
Hmm.
believe. Either runs 48.33 or 48.44, but I run 48.77 and I break 49 and I end up taking second place behind Danny. And like I said, that was the highlight of my really my running career,
Right.
because it was the first time I got a chance to, run against an Olympian like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's totally shocking to me. And in fact, I got this, the All-American
Right.
recognition. And then of course we come back, we do the relay. We kick bucket in the relay, taking second place
Yeah.
with our freshman squad. So we on that relay we had two freshmen and we had
Yeah.
Steven. And I think
Did Henry
Stanley.
come back? Because Henry would have been hurt the whole year, but I think he
Yeah, yeah,
came
yeah, yeah.
back
He came back, right. Yeah, yeah. And
just for nationals.
just for nationals. So we had Danny, Steve, and we had Stanich and myself. Um, and and then that was like got everybody, I guess, on the track squad, like, yo, we got, because we always had solid throwers, you
Yeah.
know. We always had UCLA always had solid throwers.
Yeah.
They always
Art had the throws nailed
and our
down.
and our pole vaulters, we had guys that showed up in the
Oh
pole
yeah.
vault throws.
Curran's one of the best pole vault coaches ever. The
Far, by
treatment
far.
he's gotten at UCLA is just a sham. I'm so upset the way they've treated him. It's amazing, but yeah,
It's interesting how that's going. But in any case, that was like that's when I knew I fitted into the program. So you look back and say, wow, I was a walk on the team, and you get ridiculed. You hear all the little bullshit that your
yeah,
teammates say behind your back.
yeah,
Them knowing you're not on scholarship, they take little digs at you
yeah,
all the time,
yeah.
and you gotta suck that up,
That's
especially
amazing.
if you want to be out there. I got a question. Do you remember? And I wondered if this happened to you. I know it happened my freshman year. So this was 85 season. I swore half of the men's team got shin splints. We were all running around in those Adi Star
Mm,
trainers that had the sole of the shoe was the emblem, the Adidas emblem
yeah.
was the makeup of the sole on the tread and those basically like I would say training shoes that the football team
Hmm.
um, were wearing. So for them to be in grass,
Right.
you know, they were fine. But I remember in my case, and probably another 6 or 7, 8, if not at least 10 or 50 more athletes, all had shin splints really bad, really,
Hmm.
really bad. We had ended up have to change those shoes. But I remember as a do you recall this when you got the knock to go to the equipment room to get your big roll of tube socks and
Right.
t-shirts and shorts and all that,
Yeah.
not everybody was privy to that when we got to UCLA.
Yeah, I remember the old just the gray with the blue letter,
Yes,
those, and then the real baggy sweats.
the real
I remember
baggy sweat,
those.
dude.
The
You know
shoes
what?
you're talking about, the shin splints. I think you're laboring under the common misconception. I get this all the time. When people say you ran track at UCLA, I go, no, I was on the UCLA track team. I didn't run anywhere. I mean,
I jumped.
I was a high jumper. I ran 45, 50 feet, so my idea of a long run was 100 meters. 50 meters is overtraining. So I don't know that I ever was in danger of shin splints
Chin
um,
split, right?
from running. Now, from jumping, yeah, but not from those
Oh,
trainers.
hell yeah, from
Yeah,
jumping.
not from I still think I've been thinking about this for the last few years of training, but I think sprinting is basically plyometrics itself. I mean, it's so explosive, and so that explosive push off, from foot to foot. I go literally sprinting is just bounding from foot to foot.
Oh, it
So
is. It is. And I
highly
would,
plyometric.
yeah, I would tell hurlers that was the biggest. Matter of fact, it's so crazy. Remember when I would watch Mike Keyboard train with the pole vault, right? And
Yeah.
Mike was a guy. I remember he would every now and then he'll jump in that 100 meters, and he'll put a couple legitimate 100-meter guys to shame, right?
Uh-huh.
And I remember I used to watch because we didn't do a lot of plyo. We did a lot of popovers, obviously, and those
Right.
are plyos. But I remember watching Mike do a shitload of plyos in the grass or even on the track, and I'm like, okay, I really locked in with and had with those guys.
Hmm.
Plyos pretty much got me together because when we understanding the facility of the plyos, how fast it gives you well, you work on your elasticity, but the bounding
Right.
itself aids in that explosive that you need. And as a
Yeah.
hurdler, it's especially as a hurdler when you are ambidextrous, um, it helps out a lot because you really take a lot off your off knee when you're able to be able to bounce over there and get the knee over and drop back down. So the plyo game is something that is very needs to be very consistent. I think as a workout tool for many athletes, especially hurlers. Um,
Yeah.
and then and typically a good hurdle coach will have his athletes do plyo, or a good coach period would
Sure.
have his athletes do plyos, unless you're probably a 1,500-meter runner or something like that. But
Well,
then if
yeah.
you're running the 3,000, you better do some plyos because they might throw your butt in that
Yeah.
steep.
I just remember the plyometrics really didn't start coming out like with the name plyometrics. Like it is one of those things that you'd heard of and you kind of thought you knew what it was. And then my senior year was 86. I remember going into Bob Alejo in the weight room and saying, hey,
Mhm.
I want to put some stuff together and do some plyometrics. So we started, doing some of the, 2-footed box jumps and we at that time were getting kind of creative with it, but it was still, I want to say in its infancy, even though I think the Russians knew way more about it than we did because we were learning after getting a little bit of those peeks behind the curtain, what are these Russians guys doing? And they were doing the 7-foot depth drop jumps and, and then exploding up out of those. You're watching that going, wow, I don't know how much of those I can take, and
Yeah, I owe a lot of my season, my success to Barbaleo. He was my strength coach. Obviously our strength coach was UCLA, but when I graduated and finished up and running at an elite level, I stood by his side, and he had to create the program for '92, that Olympic year, which I had.
yeah,
And the fact that, I guess, the osmosis of being at UCLA with all those great athletes there, Olympians there, and having that opportunity to be a part of those teams. Um, but like I said, in '88, which was really cool because just it being my senior season, and you know how, when you watch the collegians, especially after this year's World Championship, you see, or even last year in the games, you find so many collegian, with those collegians who are lucky enough to have that long season, go
right,
to USA championships and make Team USA, and then to go on and to perform after these long seasons through these rounds,
yeah,
and then hopefully gain a medal or two. Uh, that's incredible. So that was, me having being part of that experience. I really applaud it. And you have to really take on a great mindset in order to really have a long season and push yourself through that. But I guess the fact that it's an Olympic year, World Championship year, those are the type of catalysts that you do need to push you through. Because Troy, think about this. Back in the day, our national championship, you had international championship in a sport every 4 years. You
right,
know, you
right,
look at it now, it's a biennial calendar. You have a world championship, it's 2 years of world championships and the Olympic Games. But now, after COVID,
right,
look what we just had Olympics. We got a world championship. Next year we got another world championships,
yeah,
and then Olympics. So this,
yeah,
they really have the windows, the calendars and the windows set up that athletes can get a lot more, or have an opportunity to make these national teams. Obviously, the seasons are going to still be long, and you still got to,
yes,
put effort and do your thing. But the fact that you can, like I said, we would go, okay, I got 4 years to train. That used to be our conversation.
right,
Now it's, I got a season to train.
yeah,
Literally, you stop and you have a season. And I think that's the reason why a lot of the younger athletes, well, a lot of athletes now have pretty much called it a season right after Worlds. Even I found that a lot of them,
yeah,
not even a lot of US athletes I noticed aren't really coming over to Europe if they don't have enough points in that Diamond League schedule that they do have now.
yeah. Well,
So,
it's interesting you bring that up, Kevin, because we've been having this conversation for a while. I had Alan Hankel on a few weeks back,
oh yeah, my
and
goodness.
we talked about the fact that track and field is everybody. It depends on which way you're looking at it. Some people are saying, hey, track and field's as good as it's ever been. There's lots of money up at Eugene, and Mount Sac is a gorgeous place now, and we've got the Olympics coming, and on and on. And then at the same time, I remember when we were at UCLA and people were talking about going over to Europe, and to me, I didn't have any idea what going over to Europe would entail and getting over there and doing that. But all I ever heard was, oh, these stadiums are packed with people and they love their track and field, and it's just amazing. And I'm finding out that that's not the case as much as it was, that it's really not quite as big as it was. So we're talking about how do we,
I,
increase, raise the bar of the sport as it is, like we're talking about, because you just don't see us on TV. You only see us on TV in the Olympics, and if we do see us on TV at the big meets now, the NC2A seem like they're a week or two delayed,
and
or,
everybody's not watching the telecast from their cell phones now. Back
right.
then we gather in front of a big screen, and
Yeah.
it's so monetized now that everybody is trying to, you got to pay for this for a link to that, and then you get
Yeah.
real crappy coverage of the stuff that you paid
Oh,
for.
terrible
And
coverage. Yeah.
my thing is, quit trying to charge. Don't First of all, don't charge track and field fans. What they need to do is allow access to the stream of track and field, right? It's not
Right.
like you can't afford it. It's billions of dollars already invested.
Right.
Allow that stream, because people spend half the time trying to find an outlet to watch the sport.
Yeah. Where is
Yes,
it?
what
I have
they do
no
is,
idea where it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If it's continental, they got the continental blocks from the VPNs on the computers. So it's like, I used to hate this, dude. Canada will get all the great track and field, they'll show the rounds of all the nationalities. They'll show the Jamaicans run. They'll tell the guys all the different heats with all the different athletes from around the world.
Yeah.
You only focus on our top athletes in those events, and then if our athletes aren't competing in a particular round in the schedule, they won't show it.
Right.
And we will get, and then people be like, "Yo, did you see Usain Bolt running the semis and set a world record or close to it?" We're like,
You're like, who's
"No,
Usain Bolt? Yeah.
yeah, we didn't get that, we didn't get that covered. We got the next heat
Right.
with Gatlin in it, and it was a qualifier, um, and I'm like, but then we're in the same continental, North America feed, but they put the zip code blocks on it,
Uh,
and you scrambling trying to watch track and field, and you're losing your damn mind because
yeah.
you get one race and you don't get another race. You get one, and
Yeah.
I'm calling people up in Canada, and friends of mine who are announcers, and they're,
Right.
yo, did you see so? I'm like, no. When
Yeah.
right before that feed came, it went dead, or this, that,
Right.
a lot in your region. I'm like, ain't that a bitch?
Yeah.
And so, first of all, NBC needs to, when it's track time, quit trying to monetize it.
Yeah.
Everybody, let the real track fans see it and let them engage in it. And once you let them engage in it, I'm telling you, their conversations about the sport itself is going to feed more sponsor. This is just my thinking.
Right.
Sponsorship into the sport. Um, I think it's like they have a template they've been doing and been dealing with for a long time, and they really don't want to get away from what they've been doing, but
Right.
technology is forcing them
Yeah.
to do other things, I guess
Mhm.
keep up. But from a marketing standpoint, their marketing sucks. It
Right.
just it sucks.
We're not getting any athletes. I think we've talked about this ad nauseum. Like I said, it's not the first time, but going through and looking at it, going, well, hey, who are these athletes first of all, and can we market them? You look at basketball is all about the players. Like most people are fans of players before they go to a certain team. They're like, okay, maybe we can get these three guys together on one team and then we'll have a good team. It doesn't even matter where that team is. It's just these three players together. Is that enough to get us a championship? Right. And then football is all about the players from year to year. Tom Brady's still playing. Everybody knows who he is. There's hugely marketable names. But when you come to track and field, unless you're a track and field fanatic, you don't know who those people
Who
are.
was obviously, and this is not a trick question. We all should know this. Now, who is the most popular athlete in 2020? And we're gonna go
2
by
years ago.
social media. 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, who would you say?
Sha'Carri Richardson.
Really?
Sha'Carri was the most talked about athlete at the
Right.
U.S. trials after her little marijuana situation that
Right.
she had.
Right.
She was the most talked. I mean, she was talked about in circles outside of athletics. We
Right.
talk about sports back and forth. We're track and field guys. We know
Yeah.
this. But when you got NBA players and football players and
Right.
everybody else in these major sports comment about her, and then not just sports people, but people outside of the sport.
Right.
Everyday people walking up and who would never even looked at it, really considered giving much attention to a track meet. They found that situation about the young girl and her little
Yeah.
health issues that she had to deal with and things that she went down. And she was the most taught. I mean, like you had Hollywood A-listers commenting about it.
Right.
Now, if I was track and field, even on that plane, I would have took that as a way, as a teaching moment and as a publicity moment to really do something in that spheres.
Yeah.
But I think some of it was lost.
Hmm.
Uh, the irony is, I think the irony was that they had, you know, Kevin Hart and Snoop, doing Olympic commentary.
Right.
They use that as a platform to I guess go outside I guess
Right.
their broadcasting channels, and that was cool. That was cool. But I think they need to do what you said earlier. They need to highlight the athletes specifically more. Make them local superstars. And I said
Yes.
that's what they need to do. They need to highlight your America, your Cali athletes, your Texas athletes.
Yes.
Highlight the
Yes.
highlight the teams. I think what really would help track and field would kind of go back into this whole. I mean, the teams.
Dual meets. Whatever happened to dual meets?
Exactly. Dual meets and teams. I mean, you got football teams, basketball teams, American football teams. Everything is team evolved. You
Yes.
know, the track and field is just one of those. They try to isolate it and like this that, but not. We all got these uniforms on with same color
Yeah.
uniforms or flags or this that and the other. And collectively, when you watch all the world athletic meets, there's always some sort of team component that
Yes.
they've drawn upon over the past few years. Those. I mean, matter of fact, they created events around relays
Yes.
just so they can be more entertaining to the fans. They got mixed relays now. That's something they didn't have back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah. I think, there's been some attempts to, get things going, and creating more interest, and they've had some limited success. But I think what you're saying too is, I mean, I looked at the golf right now. I love golfing, and there's this big upturn on the tour, and they bring in this brand new golf tour, which is
But the
offering
one in
everybody
Dubai
tons
or
of money and this and
is that
that.
the one?
But it's team oriented. They're putting together these teams with certain high level players and then other lesser level players, whatever. But man, everybody's jumping ship off the PGA, and going to this,
You have
and
to
it's like,
evolve. PGA may be a little stagnant I mean, think
yeah,
about it.
you
I mean,
you got to be ready.
you have to be ready. I mean, that was a great set of competition when you had the old school guys.
Yeah,
But now they're trying to obviously get younger golfers. I mean, and you know they're out there. Like I said, they're just trying to grow the
yeah.
capacity of the sport. And I think they're going to do very well. They should do
Competition
very
is
well.
always good. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe there's no competition amongst the people that are doing the track and field. It's like you said, you've got this old guard that have been doing it this way forever, and it's like, hey, this is what we do. We
They have
know
a
how to.
system. They have a system. I mean, when I went to the meeting in Lausanne, you know, it was a reflection of how track and field has been managed over the years. And the European promoters and directors, they obviously they have their template of how they do it. Um, and it makes great sense, and it makes great sense for the transition from the pro elite athlete. What happens on our side in the U.S. is what we have that obviously that collegiate system that feeds into our international team system.
Right.
And we have great athletes. And the crazy thing about our collegiate system, we have all the internet, well, the top international athletes who compete collegiately uh, in America. And that's another thing they can utilize as a tool. They can literally
Yes.
highlight. You got the young kid from Liberia out of Florida. I
Hmm.
mean, when you start, looking at these athletes, you find. I mean, you have American athletes who have allegiances to other countries. Through their parents or
Sure.
grandparents, performing, making these teams and doing exceptionally well. That should be a point of identification for as a marketing
Hmm.
tool by these. And I'm not going to try to put like NBC under the gun, because there are marketing companies that specifically go out and their job is to do just that. NBC is
Right.
just a platform to highlight it. These sort of packages can be brought to them, or basically even the people whose job is to possibly seek and do things like that. They're not doing their job.
Yeah.
I think based upon the amount of money which is already invested, there are many things that they can do for the sport. Many things they can do for the sport. A lot more, a lot more
Yeah.
engagement, a lot more bringing. I mean, to this point, and they may do this in the future. I've been the world record holder for almost had been the world record holder for almost 30 years. 29
Right.
years. In that 29-year period from 1992 up until I haven't seen it done. Maybe they done it up until I haven't seen it done. They never sat down. Myself, Andre, Edwin, Felix Sanchez, Derek Atkins.
Right.
Uh, who else? Um, I'm talking to all the Olympic gold medalists. You know,
Yeah. In between. Yeah.
game. They have a sit down and just chop it up about create a segment for them to talk about not only their experiences in that event in sport, but talk about what the other athletes may have meant to them during the course of their career. Like you
Right.
mentioned earlier, how when I was competing, Evan was the man, and he was on his way out when I was on my rise. But I had a different perspective as a young hurdler watching this guy, and listen to the tale of the tape of Edwin Moses, and listen to the fan base and people literally saying, Edwin ran 47:02. He's the king, the legend of the sport. No one's ever going to run under that under 47 seconds. So of course, and I'm tinkering in my head. Yeah, somebody's going to do it. Not that
Right.
it's me, but in my head, I got to create a strategy that's going to give me the type of shape and give me the kind of confidence that I feel that I'm capable of running under 47 seconds. And I think the biggest thing was they've never done that.
Yeah.
And as a track fan, I would have loved to sit down and hear Josh Cuthbert talk about the 56 Olympic Games and
Right.
how and how what's the gentleman's name? Herb Douglas was inspired by the great Jesse Owens when
Yes.
he was it Herb was when he was it was a parade with Jesse Owens in the car, and
Hmm.
he a young kid and he saw Jesse in the car and I don't know either ran up on the car and shook his hand or Jesse got out the car.
Yeah.
They had a connection. They made a connection, and that young kid went on to become an Olympian.
Yeah.
Because what happens in our sport is put it this way: the IOC, their biggest legacy is their biggest legitimacy is their legacy.
Right.
You know, they take the legacy of the Olympic
The
Games,
history and the
history,
pomp and the
what it means,
circumstance. Yeah.
in the times and circumstances in which they've been able to push sport in a direction through wars, through famine, through this,
Mhm.
that, and the other, all this stuff. The history. It's always a earmark in history. With that being said, those particular milestones need to be every Olympic Games, every company should try to utilize the same template that the IOC uses. Manufacturers, because think of just print ads being made, posters being made, all type of memorabilia being made. Um, and these companies, I see as from a marketing standpoint, they can utilize this. They can do they
Yeah.
can you know I would specifically do okay, let's talk about the hurdles of the 80s. I mean, that's a segment. I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about football, American football. We talk about that 72 Miami Dolphins team. We talk about
Yep.
that Dallas football team.
Hmm.
Tom Landry when he was the coach and Staubach was the quarterback and those guys.
Right.
We think of history. That's what we look. That's how we look at and judge sports. We get the
Yeah.
time. And that's how we compare. Um, so they were able to formulate that, and then again, I would like to have a lot of I'm very biased. I would love to have all the hurlers be learned in that event that they're participating in.
Right.
It'll be like, okay, Troy, do you know who Dick Fosbury is? And you'll be go, the name sounds
Who?
familiar,
Sounds
you
kind
know.
of familiar.
So
Right. Yeah.
I think if they make that connection, I mean, and it's like low hanging fruit because every
Yeah.
year, you know, information is there. You just need to just massage it,
Yeah.
regurgitate it, put
It's
it, put
true.
a
I
different,
mean,
put a
and
different stick.
it gives you more stars to talk about. You don't just have your current stars. You're still talking about the legends of the past and how they would
Exactly.
compare and where they are now. I mean, Dick Fosbury still is at the Drake relays every year, or
It goes
there's
to
somewhere
Drake.
back east where he's like the grand
Games.
high poobah of the meet. Like they parade him by his table, and it's almost like he's got a crown and a scepter, and it's like, here you
Exactly.
come. It's like, well, yeah, he jumped 7'4". He's an Olympic gold medalist. He revolutionized the sport. Let's
The
let's
bar
go
be
by and
raised,
say
right?
hi. Yeah, you should know. Who he is. It changed everything. Absolutely, I
So
love
there,
that
there
idea.
are ways of doing it. I just think functionally, um, just certain things aren't made. And so therefore, when you have obviously programs like yourself and we can have this dialogue, I'm sure someone's going to hear this and it's going to make it to those channels and they're going to hear about it. And then the two of us, we're going to see some changes, you know, because a lot of these things just don't help pop up out of nowhere. You're going to see somebody,
Yeah,
you're going to see a round table, you're going to see it. Like I said, we had they're great stories. Cause like I said, I grew up in the shadow of the great Edwin Moses. So my perspective is just that,
yeah,
and Andre Phillips, you
yeah,
know, yeah, guys grew up in my shadow, when I stopped competing at a high level, you had guys like, we had Felix Sanchez and you had Derek Atkins,
yeah,
and then you have locals, you have the local stories because Felix is a SC guy,
yeah,
and Derek is a Georgia Tech guy. So you got all these different, the angles are there. You
yeah,
know, folks
yeah.
just have to be creative enough to do just that and to discuss it. But I definitely want to. I think, well, not think, I know that there's an audience for that because I know if I want to, if I'm still at 55 years old, still want to sit down at the table and hear what Edwin has to say, I think that there's a story behind. I mean, there's not. I mean, there
Yeah.
is a story behind it because the conversation is great
Yeah.
uh, of Mike Edwin Moses' connection, and even and Andre. But folks really want to would like to know, and because think about it, that's what social media is. Their biggest, I guess, magnification is the fact that individuals who wouldn't be normally highlighted or isolated in their
Yeah.
lifetime now have an opportunity, to have a million people know what the hell they doing on the weekend, or
Yeah.
it could be silly, it could be serious, it could be more
Right.
information. It could, this is happening nowadays. So I know if a guy in Mumbai is very popular because he can do push-ups or pull-ups, then a guy like Edward, the folks definitely want to hear, well, Kevin, when was the first time when you met Edwin Moses, or was there ever a
Yeah.
first time? I mean, I remember in 1987, we go to LSU, January 4th. I think I'm making through, I'm going through the rounds, and right before the final, the men's race, the day before, I'm not mistaken, Danny Harris beats Edwin and breaks Edwin's streak. Uh,
Really?
yes, it was like June 3rd or 4th. I think June 4th. June 4th, 1987, around that time. I need to do it as a Google search. But then the following day was my biggest moment, collegiate moment. My second biggest moment. It was the first time I became an NCAA champion in the hurdles, right?
Right.
In the individual 400-meter hurdles. So that was a big highlight for me. Then, of course, our relay team does this thing. But that was, the word. I was like, damn, Edwin got his streak broke,
Yeah.
by,
Right.
by
That's
Danny.
huge.
So that's a conversation that I can have. Can you imagine? Here I am, Danny, one of my idols, in the hurdles. And now I got Edwin Moses here at a table. So there's a story about between me and Danny, then a story between
Yep.
Danny and Edwin, then a story between Danny and Edwin, and then Edwin and myself, or all these different great stories that no one has ever had the opportunity to hear about, you know.
Now
And that
that,
goes to an individual like myself, to the athletes and other
yeah.
events.
So that Olympic final in '92, was you, Edwin, was Danny in that also? Was
Well,
it
in that, no,
you
no, no.
guys
Well,
the three?
88 race was the last race Edwin ran. Edwin retired after 88, after the Seoul Olympics in Korea, in South Korea.
Okay, so I'm mistaken. You weren't
No,
racing
no, no.
against
See,
Edwin
I
in
made the
'92.
88 team, but I took fourth place behind Edwin in
Right.
88. Right.
Right.
So I take fourth place behind Edwin. So 4 years later, I had enough time to kind of, okay, Kev.
Yeah.
I remember in 88, the greatest thing that happened to me, or one of the most debilitating things. However you ever look at it, that wasn't debilitating at all. But I got caught up in the Olympic hype. I remember at one point. I mean, I ran out there and ran and did my best, but I literally remember getting consumed by being in
This
the
is the
Olympics,
Olympics. Yeah.
because it's a great overwhelming feeling, because you thought about it, you dreamt about it, you trained hard for it, and you made the team.
Right.
So I went into the games as, I want to make the Olympic team. My mindset never was in the game to tell myself, to
To win.
program myself to say, to win,
Yeah.
because I count myself out of the race already. I was like, Edwin in the race, Andre, these guys are,
Right.
47 hurdlers. You know, I've never beat them, and just a big track fan. But like I said, my thing was getting there, and I got there, and I
Yeah.
got the uniform, and I did my best in the race. But psychologically, I wasn't 100%.
Right.
Was fanning out too much. I didn't lock in, and
Right.
it wasn't
I
until
love that.
'92 that I
Yeah.
locked in. Because even some of the doubts that I had, and I never forget this, some of the doubts that which I had in my head back in '88. I remember when you go to the call room, you warm up, you go to the call room, they do the whole numbers spike check, and then they make sure you got your pins, your singlet with the proper uniform number on, and all this, that, and the other. Because you have all that done while you're there, and then they march you out onto the field in the order in which your lane assignment is. So we had lined up once we got out of the call room, and remember going from the call room into the track. And we get out onto the field, and I remember this little voice in my head was saying, "You remember what happened in 1988? You took fourth place." I never forget this, and
Right.
I, my, and
Wow.
and I'm nervous, and I'm going, wow, this is crazy. This is crazy because I remember in '88 on the practice track, I'm warming up, I'm feeling good, doing my thing. Uh, it's 3 rounds, right? And I think it's 3 rounds. Yeah, three
Yeah,
rounds.
yeah.
3 rounds in. I'm on the track, and all of a sudden, Troy, my hamstring knotted up. I never forget. I had a little ping in my hamstring, and then what bothered me was the fact that it wasn't there. And then it tightened up. And I was like, oh my God, where'd this strain come from? And
Yeah.
I remember when I got to the final race, gun goes off, I'm running, I'm going 12 steps, get to the first hurdle, going 12, 2, 3, 4, 5, running 12s. And literally, I don't have a strategy in '88. I didn't have a sound strategy until '92, 4 years after the fact. But in '88, I'm just running, skinny guy running. And I'm in good shape, but I'm literally feeling my hamstring grab or that knot. When the hamstring, when the leg extend, it can only go so far with
Right.
the elasticity there's a pain threshold there. I feel the pain. I'm like, and I'm ready to, get back on the track and ease up on it. And that happened as I was on the track. And it kind of kept me from really pushing. Then of course you start fatiguing, and that knot gets a little bit more, that lactic acid, that
Right.
knot gets, it becomes a bit more painful when not knowing. I'm not sure if I got enough leg lift or drive, or if at any moment it was going to pull, or is it just, just a cramp.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I make it, get to the final, take fourth place behind Edwin. And as soon as I crossed the finish line, that night, and my muscle went like this, and it just opened up. When I was walking along the
Wow.
track to congratulate Andre after he won the race, I'm going, what the hell happened to that knot?
Yeah. That's
And
so
I stressed myself out, and I can tell you what it happened because I was it was a heat. It was that heat that I ran against Edwin. I never forget. There was a heat that I ran against Edwin, and the fact that I was in the heat with him, I put the pressure on myself being next to him.
right.
I think it's lane two. There's actually a picture of that race that made the cover of I think the Mirror magazine in France, and it was an article on doping, athlete doping, but it was a great cover that I had gotten. And Troy, what I'll do is I'll send you a picture of that, and
Oh, that'd be great.
I'll never forget it because I think I made a caption on social media years ago, and I'm walking. I got Evans walking this way, and I'm walking that way, and you can see the front of him, and you can see my back. And it's like back
Right.
to back. I think I put a caption "back to back legends" on the bottom of it.
Nice.
The photo's really cool when I saw it. But that was the case. And so when I got to '92, I remember walking on the infield, and that little voice was like telling. I was like, no, 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 this is 1992.
Yeah.
And I had a series of races against, the field in different places around the world that I was in really good shape. And a lot of things had already lined up
Yeah.
in '92 that was to my advantage. One was, I mean, it's kind of mean, but Danny had got hit with a drug violation in May, right before U.S.
Mhm.
trial, a recreational drug violation, and forced him to not be able to participate. And he was just making his comeback,
Right.
um, being suspended earlier, and he was on a tear. Oh my God, he was the one. I mean, and mind you, Sam Matete had a great year, exceptionally great year in '91 when he won the World Championships
Right.
in Tokyo, but he ran at 47.10 at the Zurich meet, right?
Right.
Ran past Danny and I like we were standing still. And so early on in the season, based upon the '91 season coming into it, he got to be
He's the favorite.
one of the favorites. And then of course I'm
Yeah.
racing against Winthrop Graham back and forth. He's beating up on me, but it's very tight. You really don't know until
Right.
at the end of the games,
Sure.
but competition wise, it's heated. He gets DQ'd in his round, in his second round. He
Really?
gets from a lane violation, a trail leg lane violation.
Oh,
His foot, he broke the plane in his lane. His foot dangled over the lane and pulled down the hurdle in the guy's lanes next to him. So when the Swiss, not Swiss, this the Swedish gentleman went to take the hurdle, as he was approaching the hurdle to tack it,
he already
Sam
got knocked over.
caught it and was bringing it down. So of course he's freaking out because he's trying to take
Yeah.
a hurt, falling already. There's a protest, obviously, but so Sam gets DQ'd, and I'm like,
Wow.
"Whew, I got to worry about Sam." Worry
Right.
about Winthrop, Winthrop, we have always had this rivalry, collegiately, um, and even collegially, I collegially, I was able to one up Winthrop, but internationally, he had all the international iron. He beat me at the Pan Am Games of '87. Yeah,
Hmm.
Pan Am '87. He beat me. Um, and then he placed higher than I did at the World Championships in '91 and a few other international meets. So I kind of had that fourth place brand, in the back of my head,
Yeah.
that barcode. And I'm like, I got to shake that. But so my thing was, after all that shit happened, Troy, I was like, okay, Kev, you got to figure out a better way, a better method of just running the race. You got all the tools, you just got to mechanically put it together.
Right.
And so that was one of the key things that over the years, John and I had locked in on. And it was basically, okay, you got a step pattern. You've been going 12 here and there, but you just got to strategically place those 12 steps where you're going to need them to be more beneficial. And I came up with the strategy of just going 12 for 2 hurdles and to open up about 8 or 9 meters on the field right in that section. And it's just one of those situations where you just kind of hold the field off and maintain your little 8 meters worth of real estate
Right.
and run out of track, run to the finish line. And so that worked perfectly for me. And just kind of keep my head and not get caught up in the song and
Right.
dance that goes in your head when you get caught up in the hype. And I was like, when I remember coming to the stadium in Montjuic in Spain, Barcelona, and I'm like, okay, Kevin, just stick to your game plan. Don't deviate from it because typically happens you get hyped up and you just go.
Yeah.
And I just did just that. And I look at it in comparison in which the way the hurdlers are running now, they're just balls to the wall, with
Yeah.
Carson. And I'm like,
Right.
wow. Um, had I done that, I'm sure I probably would have ran a lot faster. But conservatively speaking, that was my game plan. My game plan was literally to go out there and win a medal, and
Right.
whether it been the gold, silver, or the bronze, it was to leave with a medal. After taking fourth place, you just want some hardware.
Yeah.
And as when I got to the final, having a game plan and sticking to it and not really forcing anything, everything just happened. And it's so funny because when I look back at the 3 rounds, I could have broken the world record in the first round based upon looking at the tape. I
Hmm.
go back, and this was recent. When I went back to look at the tape from the very first round, and it's 3 rounds, I run 48.76. I mean, my number, I ended up, same numbers, but in different order, the
Right.
46.78. It was 48.76. And I literally remember running at least 255 meters of the race and shutting down after the eighth
Yeah.
hurdle and literally taking my stride length and jogging. It felt like a big jog between the eighth hurdle to the finish line.
Yeah.
And I ran the 48.77. I'm telling myself, damn, I could have easily
Yeah.
ran 2 seconds faster from the for that next 100 meters. Easy. And then I look back at the race, I go, wow,
Yeah.
the energy level was there, the stride length was there, everything was there. It was the fact that it was the first round. I was like, I got 2 more rounds. And I just
Right.
need to, and like I said, everybody's really trying to figure out what the track feels like. We've been on the
Right.
practice track in the stadium. They had one on near the in the village. There's a practice track there. Then of course there's a track right outside the stadium. So we've been on those tracks, but when you get on the within the main stage in
Yeah.
that stadium with the stands, you hear that crowd and you're feeling it out. It's like, okay, it's all for all or nothing. And when I remember getting on that track, I had to kind of I had that kind of tension. I thought I can really go, but I need to hold myself back because I still got to run against Winthrop. And then the
Right.
funny thing is, the second round comes around. Winthrop runs for a PR. I finally get a PR over all these years. My PR, my fastest time I ran the hurdles was in Indy in '88 at the trials. I ran 47.72 to make the Olympic team in '88. And that was by photo finish for third place between Danny and Dave Patrick. So of course, when I get to Barcelona, I'm like, I got to make it through the rounds and we can figure it out at the end. And that was the case. And then of course that second round, I run 47.75. 47.63. Winthrop runs 47.62. We come off the last hurdle battling out. And I'm like, wait a minute. I remember kind of getting to the finish line. To myself, I felt like I conceded the victory because I'm like, wait a minute, we got a final to run in. I felt like I backed off a little bit, you
Right.
know, just so I can appease myself in that loss against Winthrop. But
Hmm.
the fact that he only beat me by 100th of a second, he actually had set a national record for Jamaica that day. I had a PR. He ran 47.62. I ran 63. First PR in 4 years. So it was just okay. We get to the final, and that was the whole part. Once you got to the final, it's like, okay, I got to contain myself. I got a game plan. I better stick to it. I don't know what the hell Winthrop and these other guys are going to do with
Right.
Akabusi's going to do, what both Stephans are going to do, Diagana and Karistan from France. I said, I know what I'm going to do in these lanes. Me and John had talked about it. We put this strategy together. I remember on the practice track, and this was the strategy, Troy. I knew one of the things that John and I had worked on in training, coming out of the blocks, running the first 200 in the hurdles, basically the first 185 meters, which is the first 5 hurdles, um, was to get there to cover the first 85 under 22 seconds. So in practice, we would do, repeat block work, and I'm running 21.5, 21.6. It was always okay, a fast tempo, but keep it under 22 seconds. It's all hand time too, relative. So keep it under
Right.
22 seconds. And one of the things we did was I had to learn how to do was to back off, because I would run and I would feel free and run 12 steps for hurdles 2, 3, 4, and 5, and run like 21.8. And I remember John said, okay, I want you to do the same thing, but instead of going 12 steps between hurdles, try your best to go 13, right? And I'm a time you, and we'll see what the difference is. And it's, you may have to feel like you're backing off a little bit. So I would go 13 and do the same thing and run like hand time, 21.8, 21.9. So I said, okay, so I can gauge the
Yeah.
speed. And that was the key, because once you do that a number of times, getting on that side of the track, that causes a lot of fatigue. And then you get caught up in the moment, and you might just run and get to the hurdle and just get to it and just lose your,
Yeah.
your composure. So that was a key thing, was, okay, you just need to cover the first 5 hurdles under 22 seconds, and then do your best to pick up the next 5 hurdles under 20, under 26 seconds. You
Mhm.
go, if you go 21.1, and then, 21, 26 high on the back end, that's a 47 change. So that's what the strategy was. I said, okay, if I can cover the first half under 21 seconds, but definitely cover the second half at 25 or better,
Right.
that's a sub 47-second race. So I had locked in on that. I remember when we had a practice, I had to run the first half of the race without hurdles. So hand time, that quarter that quarter that I did as a sophomore with John,
Hmm.
with him just saying, just run freely
Right.
and execute. Same thing to the T. Get out first 25 meters on the sprint like we do in the 4x4. You just run the first
Yep.
20, and then engage into your stride length, go to your arms. And then I did that for the straightaway. And then I picked up hurdle 6, 7, 8, 9. But I stepped out in lane 2 or 3, picked up, cleared hurdle 6. Then I had to engage with the stride pattern. So it was 13 between 6 and 7, 7 and 8. And the hard part was, for me personally, was to, once you started picking up and you're on the clock, you want to open up your stride and move. And I knew once I'd done it, I can actually go 12 on the backside, especially after running
Yeah.
the first 185 meters without hurdles. So my intention was to pick up and then just take off and just run through the second half the best I could. And my job was like, you better go 13 between the hurdles, between 8, 9, and 10. Don't deviate from that. And sure enough, so that was the game plan. Make sure you can go 13 steps between 7 through the finish.
Right.
And how we planned. But because I knew in some of the workouts, when we would do the 150s, we had a workout in which we'll set up hurdles. I would start between 6 and 7, right? And with some cones. I would run up into 7 to clear, but I would have to make my stride adjustment to make sure it was 13 for 8, 9, 10, and then finish up the race. We had done that a few times, and I had covered that. I had covered the first, say, that 150, which is 7 hurdle to the finish line. It's 150
Right.
meters, flagpole, bam. Multiple times I had covered that in about 18 seconds, right? Um, No, actually faster than that. 17 seconds,
Right.
16 seconds. It's like running 150. So 16 high, 16 mid to 16
Yeah.
high.
Yeah.
So it was just an adjustment that I would have to make. And then there was times in which I would have Danny and Steve in the inside lanes, and I'm running, trying to, simulate the speed. But that was the problem that I had with at first when I was going 12s on the backside, because we were running the 150s with Steve and Danny, and I'm trying to stay up with their tempo. In order for me to do that, I'm going 12. And John's like, no, I don't want you to do that. I just want you to engage in 13 and make sure you do 13. You can go 12 if you have to, but you can engage in
Right.
everything consistent, because I want you on your dominant leg coming home. Just in case you hit the hurdle, you have more stability in getting over the barrier, getting on the track and moving through. And that was the case. So I said, okay, the strategy was basically get to the top of the hurdle, get to hurdle number 7 in at least 29 seconds. That
Right.
was it. That was it. You know, and I got there in 20, maybe 28 high, and I finished up in what, 17?
Yeah. Yeah.
17 high, right?
Right.
And once you started calibrating the numbers, it was a sub 47-second race. And I was like, okay. And even all the mental preparation prior to that, I think a funny story is this. In 1989, I got my very first number one world ranking, right? I think Andre was the top hurdler coming from the '88 season, winning the gold medal. He got injured in '89. I had one of the fastest times in the world. It wasn't
Right.
exceptionally fast, but it was faster than everybody else. So in 1989, I got my first number one world ranking, uh, and then that's '89. So my foresight was I needed a number that I need to lock in on uh, as my goal to run a world record, and that number became 46.89, based upon that year that I was ranked number one. So that was
Okay.
that became my pin number on my little.
689. Okay.
Yeah. So that was, and then and like the story goes, I used to write on pieces of paper, roll it up, and stick it in my spikes,
Mhm.
and, and then run workouts. And then when I'm tired and I'm resting, I would go under the sole, lift it up, unravel the number, look at it, and say, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is the reason why my head throwing up. This is the reason why I'm busting my ass.
Yeah.
This is the," and I rolled it back up and I stuffed it back in the shoes. And that was like my affirmation of what I wanted to achieve. And of course, even in the village in Barcelona, Jose Perillo was an 800-meter runner from University of Tennessee. He was on the Olympic team with us in '88. No, in '92. We were roommates, well, suite mates. My roommate was actually Quincy Watts. But I remember I was in the room and I was drawing on the wall and with a pencil, and I was writing 4678, 4689 on the wall, real small. And Jose was walking by. And he scared the shit out of him. I think he said he called me what did he call me? Jelly Man. You'll figure out why he called me Jelly Man. He said, Jelly Man, what you doing? And I jumped, right? I said, I'm just drawing on the wall. And he looked at me dead. He says, well, if that's the number that you want to run, man, you got to write it a lot bigger than that. I didn't expect him to say it because I was writing it real small on the wall, and I
Right.
said, okay. And I took the pencil and I wrote it really big on the wall,
Right.
4678 on the wall, and that was my number. And I was, like I said, going to bed or going in the room or walk by, you see it and you look at it. Uh, and the crazy thing is, John had started training Quincy um, after Coach Bush had coached him through his collegiate season at USC.
Right.
So he would come over to UCLA and train with us prior to the going to New Orleans that year for the trials. And we were out there, Quincy goes out there August 5th, because my race is not until the 6th. August 5th, Quincy goes out there and he sets an Olympic record, wins the gold medal, right? So he comes back to the room. I'm looking at him like, damn, man. And I'm telling my roommate just went out there. We trained on the track and doing the warm-ups. We hanging out. I mean, we're teammates.
Right.
We're partners. We're all in the village, hanging out, running around, going to McDonald's, doing all the crazy stuff. And then he goes out and does his thing, wins the gold medal, set an Olympic record. I'm like, wow, my roomie just went out there and just set it
Yeah.
off. What the hell am I gonna do? I know I'm running well, but I need to step up, step my game up. And the next day, my final round, and I go out there and I, did what I did. I'm happy. You see me the last, what, maybe 20 meters. I'm smiling with this big goofy look on my face. I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the air because as I'm engaging and I'm running, I don't see nobody around me. So I'm going, I'm not only going to win a medal, I'm going to win the gold medal. And
Right.
I'm beating Winthrop. Winthrop was like my nemesis, my friendly nemesis. And I'm getting out here with the gold medal. And then of course, crossing the tape, the sub 47-second time, that was like the icing on the cake. I knew I was capable of doing it, but my truthful expectation was to win a medal.
Right.
So to win the gold medal, set a world record, and then to break Edwin's record as well. Not just,
Right.
could have been any other, I could have been in the triple jump or something like that, but it was the most coveted
Right.
record of track and field by far.
Yeah.
You couldn't compare any other world record, based upon the streak,
Right.
what he meant to the sport, what he's done with the drug testing within the drug testing community, all the
Yeah.
things that Moses has done, that preceded me, you know, I definitely climbed up on those shoulders. So of course, when I achieved that accomplishment, that was anything and everything that I wanted. Um, but even at times, I felt that me breaking Edmonds' record was a little bit too shocking for the general public because no one really kind of exalted the fact that we're looking for the fact that Edwin's record was going to be broken,
Right.
when I did it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. And I didn't prepare for it at all as well. Folks says, well, one of the questions had been, um, because I saw this. Obviously, prior to any major sporting event, you gotta have your ducks in order. You have your PR person doing this, that, and the other. You have your folks reaching out to the reporters and the magazine people and all the statisticians and all that. So all that has to be worked, and you have to do all the press work and have your contacts with the media companies and the network so they can do these special interest story. There was never a special interest story done on me at all. And it's kind of difficult for me to go, why wasn't one? Because you know, going to Jordan High School, coming up out of Watts, being Coca-Cola Future Olympian of 1984.
Right.
Um, I got $1,000 scholarship from the Coca-Cola Bottling Company that year. And I took that $1,000 and utilized it for my registration fees for the fall at
Right.
UCLA. That was like the money that I got. And it's crazy because that marketing campaign that was done, it was $1,000 scholarship, and it was a volunteer job on the hurdling crew at the 84 Olympics. So I literally would have been out in the Coliseum moving hurdles around with my Converse polo
Right.
on and my beige khakis and my sneakers, moving hurdles around for Edwin or Roger or whoever else is out there. That was my volunteer job, and I would have handily took it. But the fact that I had a paying internship job at Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena
Hmm.
uh, during that same period, we had a carpool of students that we would drive past the Coliseum in the morning and drive back on 110, coming back stuck in traffic every time we obviously coming from Flower Street up into the
Right.
105, this nasty traffic, and get home and then lock in on the television. That happened during the trials that they had in LA, and then of course during the games. Um, but then they go to UCLA. So it was like, in my case, it was definitely a Cinderella story. Walk on to Westwood
Yep.
to record holder, and everything and everything in between of that experience. For me to actually, you know, my exclamation mark was that world record. That stood for 29 years. I can't complain, especially over the years watching far capable athletes than myself
Hmm.
attempt to break my soft record.
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
so what, so now watching the evolution of the sport, of the runners
Yeah.
and what they've done to it. I clap and cheer for these guys all the time. I'm just obviously a track fan, but man, I see what they've done in the hurdles, and I'm like, you know what? I can take credit and say I was pretty much responsible for that wave because
Sure.
I gave them something to really, I gave them I gave them the measuring stick, to raise the bar, and they did just that. And we still haven't seen the rest of us going to go on in the men's race. I think Rye is going to run. Rye is capable of running faster than what currently run, the 45.93.
Yeah.
I personally feel that Rye is capable of running, 45.5 in the hurdles, based
Wow.
upon what he's done in the hurdles already, uh, to what because he's still learning the race. I can see the mechanics of the race in which he's having issues with.
Right.
And I'm looking at the minutia. I'm looking at the things that he can correct, correct, and he can do run a bit faster. But the beauty of the hurdles that has happened over the past 2, 3 years in its evolution is just that you don't just have one dominant individual.
Yeah.
I mean, Carson came in and was dominating the race, but a simple injury could take you out of the top spot. Now you have the
Yeah.
young kid out of Brazil, who's Dos Santos runs 46.29. I mean,
Wow. Yeah.
exactly. I say the same thing. I go, wow, and a lot of conversation had been prior to the Olympics. Well, after the Olympics, when Carson ran as fast as he did, was we talked about shoe technology and track technology. That was
Mhm.
always a great conversation, because everybody was talking about or discussing the carbon fiber and the new vapor flies, and of course
Right.
the aeronautic, well, basically the Mondo track that was designed by aerospace engineers, in which so the athletes can get damn near as much energy off the track as they put in the track.
Right.
It's like those gymnast floors that they use. They have the
Yeah.
cushioning and they have the
Yeah.
spring. So this particular track literally and specifically says this is what's happening in this new formation of materials within this track. And people, you have the critics say, well, is that
Is that
fair?
fair?
I said, yeah, it's technology.
Yeah.
I ran on a Mondo surface. It wasn't a cinder track.
Right.
So for somebody who ran, an Olympic record on a cinder track, you can't compare, I can't compare what they did to
Right.
what I've done all weather, 13 millimeter,
Yeah.
you know, vulcanized rubber. I mean, the surface is gonna
Right.
be different. So the give back is going to be that, but the effort is the same. You're
Yeah.
going to go out there and push it to the limits, and hopefully, go out there and do your very best. And I was able to do that in spite of the things that I had to go through. And I think everything that I did have to go through made me a better hurdler, definitely a better person. Uh, and like, now I sit back and pat myself on the back, but then I have all these great relationships with these track and field folks. And I think in my case, the light went out.
Saw that.
I had I had the opportunity to running like I would say pretty much the golden age or a golden age of athletics uh, we hadn't seen in a long, long time, in a very long time. So I'm trying to get my position right.
Yeah, it's amazing the things that you brought up. There was one you hit on a while back, like your first time there as opposed to your second. And I
Yeah.
think I've
Oh yeah.
told the story before, like getting to the Arcadia meet as a junior. I jumped 6'8" on a Thursday, and I was all excited because my coaches got me into Arcadia the very next day, and because Arcadia was always about taking the best they could possibly get. Well, that year was loaded with 7-footers. One of them was Mike Powell. There was like a bunch of kids that jumped 6'10", 7 feet, and I'd seen their name in the paper every week, for a couple of years. And
Yeah.
so I get to that meet, and I'm walking around like a little kid at an all-star game, like trying to get autographs. I mean, Mike Powell walks up and goes, "Is that your mark?" And I'm like, "This right here?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay." And he runs from my mark and jumps and goes off and triple jumps somewhere. And I'm just like, wow, that was really cool. And, opening height 6'4". And I'm like, 6'4". I've never opened a 6'4" in my life, and I ended up making opening height and was just stoked. I was stoked to be there. Right. Next year, when I got there, I walked in going, "I'm going to win this thing." I mean, the mindset in just 1 year had changed completely. So when you said that, that's interesting because I'm always like,
The feeling, and anybody
yeah,
that's been involved in the sport who knows that feeling knows it. We know we're on that
yeah,
same vibe, and no one can take that from us because we know we internalize it and we know what it feels like, and we know what the expectation is the following year. Like, okay, been here
right.
and done that. I can put these emotions down because I can take this energy and utilize it in my efforts to clear this bar. and
Absolutely.
it works,
I
definitely
like
works.
the thing about writing on the wall, Kevin. I have told my jumpers for so long, I'm like, look, what's your goal? What's your goal for this season? And they say, oh, I want to jump 5'6". I'm like, okay. Every time you start to do run throughs this year at any meet, I said, put the bar at 5'6". I want you to look at that bar all the time so you get used to it. So it's not going to be like you PR'd at 5'4", now goes up to 5'6". Like, oh my gosh, that's really high. No, you've been looking at that bar. You've set that bar. Like you wrote it on the wall. I'm like, you should measure up a thing on your wall and put a bar there. So when you walk into your bedroom, you see a
5'6".
high jump bar that's at 5'6", And so I took that from what you said out of that. I'm like, that's another example of the things, that I think about. And then
Is what happens? Like I said, you got to get out your comfort zone too. Because had I gotten
mhm,
real comfortable being a high hurler, um, I would have never attempted to even want to try the intermediates at all. I would have bumped heads with the coach. I would have thought anything and everything to keep myself from becoming an intermediate hurler, as
yeah,
opposed to, what, this is my golden opportunity to solidify myself on this team. I
yeah.
got some great teammates. I'm a great teammate. I want to go out there and participate with these guys. There's a lot that we can do together. And that was the mindset of being a great teammate, and out of the, wanting being a great teammate, your individual accomplishments definitely come out of that.
Yeah.
Because you always seem to have a tendency to push yourself a bit more harder when you're it's on the line for more other people than yourself. A
I
lot of times
was,
you can give up on yourself.
yeah. Another quick thing that came to me was I've been working with my athletes just recently. What you're talking about, I call it my neuromuscular stimulation. I call it NMS, like really fast feet. So we've been using the hash marks on the football field, and I'm like, okay, let's go down and just I want you to go 1 foot on the hash and the other foot on the green, and that same foot on the hash, and like really short steps. I'm like, this has nothing to do with technique. It has nothing to do with cycling or anything else. I'm just like, just go, really, really quick. And then we'll go from that to, okay, your left foot hits every other hash. And then how about your left foot skipping a hash, right? So we're going from a half of a hash to a full hash to a 2. And I'm like, once you get to about 2, that's about it for most people. You might be able to hit 3 with those legs that you're talking about. But I go, it's really interesting because it's teaching me a lot about your
Body
stride
position.
length and
Yeah,
stride
exactly. Yeah, I
rate.
see everything
And
that you said.
yeah, I mean, so this is the thing. I read about this on your Wikipedia, but you have mentioned it several times while you're talking, and maybe some of our listeners out there don't know. And if you're listening, this is again Raise the Bar with Troy Haynes. We're having a very long conversation with Kevin Young from all the way from Switzerland. He's being gracious with his time. It's very late over there, and the one thing I want to talk about quickly was the 12 and 13 step that you're mentioning. Now, for some of you who don't know anything about hurdling, if you're going, Kevin mentioned ambidextrous and he's switching feet. Very, very difficult to switch feet. Most people do that completely out of desperation because for whatever reason, they got to the hurdle and the wrong foot was there and they took off. It's like somebody trying to do their best long jump off the wrong foot. So you apparently mastered both, where you got to a place where you could, according to you and working with John Smith, he's like, I don't want you to do 12s here because 12s would have been alternating, right? Was 12s
Definitely.
alternating? 13 was
Exactly.
the same because I know the same. It's got to be an odd number. For me, like I started with my left foot and I jumped on my left. And so that was always an odd number. So I remember thinking that I'm like, okay, his odd number means he's going the same leg. And then that would be the more either consistent, like you said, or John knew it was your strong leg. And then, but you were real comfortable. Like you mentioned a couple times, like I just liked hitting that 12 and just rolling on through, right? So, but then you had your problems at the end, right?
I would always feel obviously the difference, the comfort level of stepping over with the left or the right, but I was able to do it, and I think that was probably because I had no fear, because as a high jumper, when you're a young high jumper, you got to figure out, okay, which is the side I'm going to learn how to jump
Right,
from. And
right.
I remember learning how to jump obviously from both sides, but being more comfortable jumping from my left side because I can jump from the right side, but I coming from the left side, I was able to jump, and that was the. But the crazy thing about that was, I remember in the long jump at UCLA, I had jumped 24/7 on one foot and 25/7 on one, and I think 25/4 on one leg. On my dominant leg, I jumped 20. Put it this way, I was able to jump on my right leg, which is my less dominant leg. I can feel I can jump further off my right leg, but I had no control at all. So
Right.
I can run and hit the board and pop up very strong. But once I got up here, I had no coordination.
Yeah, you
One
couldn't figure out how to land it, right? Just
could know how to
yeah,
put all the mechanics together to land.
yeah,
But obviously on my left leg, which was my dominant layup leg, my
right.
dunking leg, I could run and hit it and just go into the mechanics of an arm swing and get into
Yeah,
the pin. But I remember recalling the power I would have coming off the right leg and just going up, but having no control. So it was like I
yeah,
get up, and then it's like, okay, come down.
yeah.
But with that, being able to do that definitely helped me be a better hurler. And like you mentioned earlier, when I first started hurling, that was like the biggest issue because my stride length was so long that when I would get to the hurdle in 13
Wrong
steps,
foot. Yeah,
it was
keep changing.
always I would always chopping.
Yeah,
I'm trying to go 13 steps. The great Edward Moses goes 13 steps. I can do that. I'm taller than him.
yeah,
I'm running, get to the hurdle, I'm approaching, I'm attacking, but I'm up on it. As soon as I'm getting up on it, I'm chopping, trying to go 13. And that I did that the whole season, that whole season in 88, the whole season. And then when I narrowed it, actually I did that my freshman year. I mean
mhm,
my sophomore year. Matter of fact, obviously with that 11 step
right.
at the season in 86. But that had always been something that was reoccurring. But I felt that I didn't have any control over it because I wasn't taught mentally to control it. It was just just
Right.
go out and run. But it wasn't until I got serious about it and we started breaking the race down. I said, okay, no, break it, and then it became more comfortable because it made practices a lot easier to go after. And it became a point where John and I were able to really mix things up. You know, you know how it is as in the quarter, running a quarter. Just different, I guess, critical zones you could say, where athletes kind of run into the turn and then flow out, run into it and flow out of the turn,
Yeah.
drop to the straightaway. Different moments. I was able to learn how to do just that with the hurdles, and even with the adjustment that an athlete would actually have in running a quarter mile, because the approach is different running a quarter mile, say for instance on a 4x4, if you're the opening leg and you're the second leg, obviously with that, if it's a 2-turn stagger, your second leg, you just, you run around, then you break in.
Yeah.
That's different than the first leg where you got to stay in your lane
Right. Right.
all the way around the track. And it's a whole different mindset. And I used to think that running the first leg, even while in college, I didn't never want to run the first leg because like I would think in my mind, I would have a tendency of being so far out, but not knowing the first leg is really probably the easiest leg to run in a 4x4 because
Right.
based on the stagger, it pretty much even where you may hand it off, you may hand it off way in the back, but the way with the break is, if your
Yeah.
second leg is a dominant runner,
Yeah.
they'll make up they'll make up that section that you may have fell off of, you know,
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
And I learned that sort of strategy running against guys like with guys like Danny and Steven and
Right.
Henry. That was just kind of make utilizing the sorted variations of your stride length and how you push and pull on the track with your forces. That and I learned a lot about that, but I was very comfortable running up on the hurdles like that. And it got to a point where I had to be, and so I would, because I think the biggest frustration that I always had was chopping. The
Yeah.
biggest frustration, because
Right.
you're giving the effort that you're providing, you're losing it on each hurdle that you run up on, you're backing off. You run up on, you're
Yeah.
backing off. You
Yeah.
do that 4 or 5 times, then of course with the force that you're utilizing,
Yes.
jump, playing the hurdle,
Yeah.
you're spent. You're spent. You really have to spend more time doing endurance work as opposed to speed work. You got to
Right.
find that happy medium. You know, but I love watching these guys run now. I mean, um, I had to get used to it because I realized how conservative we were running back in the '90s, based on what these guys are doing. I mean, guys running. 22 with 20 and change for the first 200, literally blazing. And one of the reasons, even prior to my world record getting broken, I was telling these guys, I said, you got those hurdlers are so talented. I thought personally they were running too fast to the first half of the race because they were expending so much energy coming home, where they were, which was affecting their stride length coming home. I remember when in 2019, when there was a match race between Rye Benjamin and Carson, I think Rye had just raced, oh no, I think they both were running. Rye had ran at 47:02 at NCAA championships, if I'm not mistaken. I think a week prior to that, Carson had ran a 47 low time. They met up here in Zurich in 2019, August 29th, if I'm not mistaken, as a head-to-head competition and a challenge to my record. So I'm on the infield and I'm watching these guys run, and the gun goes off, and I'm literally watching it tick down. And I'm saying, okay, the world record is about to get broken tonight, because I'm looking at these guys' pace for the first 3, 4 hurdles. I mean, first hurdle, they get to the first hurdle 5.5 seconds or faster, 5.2. Shit. I mean, they're blazing. And I'm like, okay, that's world record. That's beyond world record pace. They're moving. Prior to that, Carson starts to play with 13 steps to see if he can manage it. And one race, I think he managed it to about the 8th or the 9th hurdle. Then he finished up with 15s, right? But this particular race, Carson gets out, runs, but he runs 13 all the way to the 8th hurdle. And then he shifts, he shifts down, he hurdles down and goes 15 for hurdles 9 and 10. Rye runs 13 all the way around the track and gets to the 9th hurdle at 13, but gets to the 10th hurdle at 14. So Carson drops down from 13 to 15. Rye goes from 13 to
And switch
14.
legs. He had to switch legs in, right?
And so that Rye switches legs, and that momentum, that lack of momentum, causes him, because Carson is literally, he's still running
Still
that
on the
consistent.
dominant leg, yeah. But
So
yeah,
even if he slows up, he still has the type of aggression, and he
yeah,
can get in control. He can get to the hurdle. So, like you said, Rye takes it with his alternate leg, throws him off a little bit, got to land and settle everything. Carson just goes over, clears the hurdle. Then it becomes a foot race, a fitness for the last 40 meters. Carson runs 46:92. Rye runs 46:98. He ties Samba's time. So now we have 4 guys other than
under 47.
under 47 seconds, and you had 2 guys in one race to run under 47 seconds.
So you
And
knew it was coming a couple of years ago.
so I left out of there. Going, oh, the record is definitely going to get broken, because somebody's going to figure out that
Yeah.
I just need to improve on the last few hurdles in my effort. But I wasn't shocked by the record being broken, because I thought Karan Clement was going to break it, and then I thought Angelo was going to break it first. To be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
in my head, he should have he should have broken it, based upon what he was capable of doing in a flat race. He's a 44:06 or 09 quarter mile.
Yeah.
So as a person who can run that fast on the flat, my expectation was definitely he's going to run faster than 46:78 seconds in the hurdles.
Yeah.
His best became 47:25. Then Karan Clement came up. He broke my collegiate record at the time, my NCAA record. And then he ran a 40. I saw him run a 47:30, 33 or 32 at the Home Depot Center that one year.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I think he ran 47:32, and he made it look so easy. I was like, okay, after Angelo, it's going to be Karan, and neither one of those were able to, push their limit, and break that record. And of course, Samba comes around from Qatar, and he runs that 47:98 and breaks that 47 barrier. And I'm like, okay, these new guys, they're amazing though, man. They really just taking the limit off of
Yeah.
out of the, And I like the Well, I feel great. I feel great. The fact that I was able to contribute and do that and do just that. You know, I'm a legend now. I'm a living legend because of what I've done in that 46-second barrier exchange. But I love the fact that had been able to hold on to the record as long as I did, based upon the circumstances. I remember at one point, uh, Mike Powell and I had the two oldest records,
Hmm.
and then Randy Barnes
Yeah.
in men's events.
Yeah.
Other than a few other with Discus Thor and Zaniski and those guys. But we had
Yeah.
I hold on
A
that.
long
And
hold.
the fact that he broke the record in 91 and I broke he broke, I mean, the fact that he broke
Yeah.
Beeman's record in 91. And I think that makes, to me personally, makes what I've done and what Mike had done and our closeness and our connection so much more meaningful. The fact that we both were high jumpers,
Hmm.
long jumpers, uh, and we, we had a love for basketball.
Yep.
Um, he breaks the most coveted record in field events, that long jump by Bob Beeman at 1 year. I break one of the most coveted events in track
Yeah.
and field. Edwin's Herbert, and literally, Troy, I remember literally having this conversation with Mike Powell on numerous occasions, especially the year in which he wasn't able, maybe in '86, the year he wasn't able to compete at the Pepsi Invitational because he still had the collegiate eligibility.
Hmm.
He was so hot. He was so mad because here's a track that he jumps on
Every
every
day. I know.
every single day.
Yep.
And this particular day, with the top long jumpers in the world coming to LA in Westwood to compete on his track, he couldn't get an opportunity to jump against
Oh,
Carl and all
yeah.
those guys.
I
Larry
got to
Myron.
get, that was crazy. I got to jump against Sotomayor at that meet.
And yeah. Oh,
Sotomayor came to UCLA and jumped, and I'm a nobody, nothing, and I got to jump against him at the UCLA Pepsi meet.
right. And I think a lot of times Mike issue was he wouldn't get in the check. He was trying to, creatively, he was like, y'all can make things happen, but they didn't make nothing happen for him.
Right.
But after that jump off him and Carl had it in Tokyo,
Oh yeah,
they put him on the map. That definitely put him on
absolutely.
the map.
We're trying to line him up next. It'll be a good follow up. I got Willie
And that'd be
Banks a couple
awesome.
of
That'd
weeks
be awesome.
ago, so
Yeah, that'd be
we'll
great.
go
I mean,
from Willie to you to Mike Powell, all former world record holders and
uh-huh.
Olympians. And I don't know,
Bruins,
did
yeah,
Mike make a
Bruins,
team? Bruins first,
yeah.
Olympians. You're the only gold medalist in the group at the Olympic level. And then Mike won the world championships.
Won the
And
World.
yeah, so that's quite a club.
Yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
and then just the legacy of the individuals who has set the bar in the event. Because, like I
Yeah.
said, I idolized Willie Banks when him and Dwight Stone when they were competing in the '70s.
Well, Willie's like yourself too. He's a great, proponent and advocate of the sport.
Yeah.
He's super involved in, a lot of different committees and, we had some of the same discussions about, trying to increase the visibility and, the popularity of track, around the world. He's intimately involved with that. So that's a good company to be in.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. I think actually Willie and I probably need to do more together. I know he works a lot with Andre, as
Mhm.
his early guys Drake, because that's their cohorts from the same, that same era.
Yeah.
Uh, so, but the fact that we have these intimate connections with these guys, uh,
Yeah.
to me it's amazing. It's amazing, and like I said, at the end of the day, it's always a story to tell. The
Yeah.
matriculation of one's abilities to be able to go to the push themselves to the highest limits in which they felt themselves, and to go out and perform on that stage. But in my case, my experience was the fact that I'm just so lucky that athletics have given me the opportunity to travel. I remember growing up in LA and Watts, man. Every summer was just okay. How many of my grade school friends I'm going to be going, whose funerals I'm going to? How many of these guys are going to?
Yeah.
We're not gonna be in school together in the fall. That was
Yeah.
like year in, year out. But it's so crazy. I realized this in my lifetime. Had I went to USC and had the say the the educational issues that I had at UCLA and was able to overcome, I probably would have buckled under him, got on the bus, and went back to Watts like that.
Yeah.
Sure would have got me. But the fact that I was on the west side of LA and I couldn't, by a stretch of imagination, get from Westwood to Watts in a timely manner. And that's like a 3-hour bus ride. If you
Right.
transportation, right? You got to go from here to the airport and then get on the Santa Monica bus from the airport
Yeah.
to through Santa Monica to Westwood. Big mess. And if you didn't
Yeah.
know the book, you had to try to figure that out. So, like I said, and during that era too, in the 80s, you got the crack cocaine and the
Yeah.
gangs and about
Oh,
shootings and all that bullshit. Um, for someone like me who had to, deal with that on a day-to-day basis,
yeah.
uh, it could have been easy for me to just be distracted by and not even go forward and want to pursue track and to me, I pursued track not as a career, but just as an opportunity. Because where else, like I said, one year I went from they had the NYSP camp. What's it called? No, the US. It basically was. We're camp counselors for the young rich kids up in Bel Air, Brentwood, and Beverly Hills.
Right.
And the kids come down the hill, uh, and they come out on the track. They don't want to. They don't want to do anything on the track. It's hot as hell in Drake
Right.
Stadium. You
Right.
know, we try to get them to do some calisthenics or something like that. They don't want to do it. They try to get them on the iron field, the jog. They don't want, but they go from section to section. We deal with the day. We get paid our little buddy for the. And I did that one summer. This is so crazy, Troy. Check this out. I had no idea that there were these summer teams, these AE under 20 teams, these under 19 teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was clueless to that, totally clueless. Had I known that, me running that 5109, I think I may have been under 20 still. I probably could have went out for these AAU, these
Hmm.
USA teams, because I remember years later talking to somebody. It's like, yeah, I was on the team. We went to Japan. They had the Team USA uniform. I think it was a team in which Dennis Mitchell was on, and
Hmm.
um, a few cats from Florida were on that team. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that exists. And I kind of realized that even from getting into UCLA, not knowing the way in which athletes would got recruited and any of that. Like I said, I wasn't
Right.
on no big recruiting list, so I was just totally clueless. I just knew you go out for a team, you make it, you participate, and if you're
Yeah.
lucky, you get a scholarship. Um,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
you get there and you realize it's a lot. You got to peel back more layers than that, and it's a lot of politicking. And if you're not one to politic, you'll definitely be forgotten. So, but
That AAU thing is pretty intense, actually. Both AAU, you got two versions of the Junior Olympics,
yeah,
in the summer. So you've got the USA Track and Field version and the AAU version.
it's funny because I remember as a kid,
Yeah.
we all participated in the AAU version up to a
Right.
certain point. I had no idea about the USATF version. It was
Yeah.
always Erico, Jesse Owens, AAU stuff.
Yeah.
And you get the ribbons or your T-shirt and you medals, and that was it.
Yep.
You know, and and it's funny because now I'm thinking about it, AAU was very local. You had the
Yes.
local clubs, local teams, and they would actually put together the local meets in the area
Yeah.
that you would bounce around throughout Southern California. You didn't necessarily pick up and travel out of the state. You didn't have to with
Right.
AAU. You stay in Cali.
Right.
Yeah.
Till the Olympics when they come around. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. So that I didn't understand it, but now years later, you go, okay, you see the politics that goes on even
Oh,
with the organizations.
well, that's the same thing we're talking about too. Part of both the grassroots aspect of track and then also maybe why it's not growing is just because it's the same system that keeps running the same way. I think we
And the
need to
marketing of
update.
the sport is different as well. This marketing of sport is the same as well because if you look at it, it's all. I mean, the shoe company is going to market to their biggest consumers, the LDR community. Your weekend warriors. You want to sell 100 million shoes. You know,
Yeah.
you're not going to sell 100 million hurling specifically. Hurling shoes.
Right.
You need somebody who's putting in 100 miles a day on some trainers who are going to go through 3 or 4 pair in a year. You
Yeah.
know, we're lucky. If you're not an elite runner, you're not going to do that. You're
Right.
not going to wear those shoes out. Like you're going to, and then that just seems to be the case. I think what needs to be happening is needs to be more integration, which is track people and doing things amongst one another. You know.
Yeah.
You know how it's funny how the shoe companies, everybody, what I've seen is, and this one's the problem. I'm going to go back a few. In track and field, those who run the sport, they're only running the sport from the angle of putting their product on the athlete. They really don't give a damn about who the athlete is or what the athlete represents, or trying to get to know what the athlete represents. If you're running, because if you're already running fast, we got eyes on you, so we're just going to give you some shoes and let you run. But they don't get into creating any type of sports specific, personality oriented marketing campaigns. You know, they got these campaign people that sit in the room and they create these campaigns that probably don't personify what the athlete actually does on the day-to-day or feel they do on the day-to-day basis, or what type of things they're really connected to or grounded to, you know. And that doesn't feed seem that it feeds well to me to an overall recognition of the athlete's personality. Because what happens is if that one athlete doesn't do well the next year, they'll just, fill in that those spikes with another athlete.
Right.
But athlete
Right.
has a personality that they can draw in from their specific community. They'll be popular among themselves in that specific in that area, and it may give them enough energy, adulation, confidence for them to rise back up to the occasion because they're performing for their set crowd, or their set region. Um, and to me, that's what happened when you had the club sports. You had all your SMTC folks, your Pacific Coast, and we would go to these meets and we would compete hard just because we got the little singlet of this team on our chest. But now everything is so saturated with a logo.
Yeah.
Everybody has
Yeah.
the same colorway. Only things changes the tag or a different colorway for a different manufacturer, but the vibe is still the same.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I like that idea, the team thing we mentioned. Even golf crazily going to it, but like you said, the dual meet is just a lost thing. It doesn't exist anymore. And there used to be that. You used to have the U.S. versus Russia, right? Every year they would and put
Do
together
me
a team. And you're talking about a dual meet. That's where you go, hey, we take our three best against their three best, and you talk about that to people that even the parents in high school are just starting to understand that, but it's like it's really a lost art, being trying to sweep an event and get all 9
Right,
points and
exactly. You really have to
all the
calculate, play chess. You have to play
yeah,
chess and move your pieces around the table. You may
yeah,
have shitty throwers or shitty sprinters and great throwers, or shitty distance
yeah,
runners, or and as a good coach, you get with your coaches, and everybody sits back and they put their
yeah.
brains together, and they figure out. It's so funny because it's to the point how I got duped into running the 400 meter, the hurdles, 400 meter hurdles in high school. Like I said, I trained the highest. That was my specific event. That and the long jump. I love those two events. We had a track meet at Carson High School. Carson had the 300 meter hurdles stacked with their runners. Obviously, we only had one 300 meter hurdle in the race, and I remember my coach was like, "Yo, Kev, do you mind if you run the hurdles today? The 300 hurdles." I said, "Sure." He said, "I just want you to try to get, I don't want
Break
Carson
them
to get,
up. Yeah.
I don't want Coach getting all these points in the event, right?" And and I'm like, "Well, I ain't got nothing to lose." In my head, I'm like, "I'm not going to win the race, but I can place in the top five, and
Yeah.
the worst I can do is don't come up with any points." And I'm
Yeah.
not, and I'm looking at the field. I'm like, "He ain't this, this guy's not going to beat me." Long story short, gun goes off. I'm running in a race I don't think much about, and I win the race. I win in the fashion that I beat the field really bad. I beat our specific hurdler, beating bad, but I'm clueless when I cross the tape. I'm tired, I'm winded,
Yeah.
but I win in such a style and fashion that the coach is just like salivating practically. He jumps, he runs, and we fall on the ground. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell did I just do, right? It's like he has this look on his face like, I finally found my hurdler, my 300-meter hurdler.
Right.
There's a little bit of contention after with and it's funny, my teammate, his name was Troy. What's Troy? I can't think of Troy's, Troy. His last name was, damn, his first name was Troy. Can't think of his last name all of a sudden. Damn. But Troy, his name was Troy. Uh, but Troy was, he was a football player, hurdler. Anyway, I became a hurdler, a 300-meter hurdler that day. And the start of me, my trip, because it's been a long trip. To becoming a world record holder for X amount of years, world champion, Olympic champion.
Yeah.
And I was
Amazing,
talking
right?
to somebody yesterday. Oh, I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were having this conversation, and we're talking about sports. And this was at the meet. This was at the Lausanne meet, after the meet. I was talking with a friend, Mashami, and she had no idea that I won the very first ESPY in track. When they were giving out the ESPYs in
Right.
'93,
Oh,
I
that's cool.
won the very first one. And I'm like, and I realized that even the track fans, because you got the track is very generational, but the history of it kind of glues us all together. She had no idea, and she was like, "That's something you need to talk about all the time, especially how the makeup of the ESPY awards have changed over years. It went from
Yes.
something that was, specific to, well, it wasn't as many categories as they do now.
Right.
And they didn't involve all the agencies, like, the
Right.
wide, the ad agencies and the celebrity of the other sports, and they're finding different categories, obviously, to recognize people in their efforts within sports as a foundation, but the things that they do on and off the track, or field, or court. So the makeup of the ESPYs have changed, because I remember they had televised, but it was in New York, and now it's this big to do that it's like an A-list event.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's crazy.
Hollywood artists, movie comedians, politicians.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a far cry from what it evolved, what it was, but it's still the ESPYs, and the
Right.
fact that I was the very first one says I did something right.
Absolutely.
Years, so that's a
Well,
big
hey,
quick.
Kevin, it's got to be getting late for you on that end,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're running into a couple hours, so we probably have to do some editing, cut this into a couple pieces. But hey, dude, it's been way too long. I really
I know we
appreciate you
definitely got to
taking
keep
the
in
time.
contact. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And put in a word with Mike. I've gotten a couple
We
different
definitely got.
attempts to
I'll
him.
put the word out that we do. You got the Bruins going on. We're gonna do that. That's and
Absolutely.
I'll do a podcast. I'm gonna reach out to you as well.
Awesome. Hey, I really appreciate your time. For those
Yeah.
of you finishing off our podcast here, we're talking with Kevin Young, the great American UCLA world champion, Olympic champion, world record holder, gold medalist. Everything is on that list. First SB, we find out here at the end,
What's
and
SB?
highest ranking podcast member yet. So
Definitely. And I just want to say, forgive me for my movement around and my lighting. Like I said, it's
oh no.
I should have been able to set up a bit better than this, but it didn't happen. But the fact that I have an opportunity to sit back and talk to you and chat, I haven't seen you in decades.
Yeah,
Decades.
it's been since '86 for sure. That was my senior year. I
You know
was
what I mean?
off campus after that. So yeah,
Yeah, that was my
that's
big breakthrough year.
36 years. Yeah, crazy. Well, hey,
Crazy.
thanks again, Kevin, and
Well,
God bless you. Hang in there. We'll talk soon. I'm be honored to be on any podcast that you're hosting, and I don't know if I'll have anywhere near as many good stories, but
all right. Well, you take care. It's good talking to
all
you.
right,
Make sure we reach out to Mike and make this happen for him as well.
absolutely, yeah, it'd be a great run.
You
All
got,
right,
you got a great story. You got the Foot Locker stuff. Make sure if you get Mike, you got to talk about him DJing, because Mike was a damn good DJ
yeah,
at the time where hip hop was flipping around, and he has even better stories. But in any case, as good
awesome.
chat with you. You talk. You take care.
All right, thanks, Kevin. All right.